Hello, everybody. This is Jonathan Lack, host of the Weekly Stuff podcast. And before Sean Chapman and I started doing this show regularly in 2012, we actually had a different podcast called The Monthly 10, which was an extension of my blog at the Denver Post's Your Hub at the time. Now, this was way back when we were still in high school, and we're still very much learning the ropes of podcasting and, life. These episodes are not available online anymore, and as long as I am alive, most of them will not be. But there are a couple that connect to various topics we've covered over the years, like Doctor Who, or the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Ones we've even referenced a couple of times on the show, especially in Doctor Who conversations. And I am taking those episodes out of the vault, dusting them off, and presenting them here on our YouTube channel to fill out and complete some of our playlists. The audio quality isn't great. The people you're about to listen to are not experts about anything at all, but it might be worth some fun. You'll see. This is the Weekly Stuff from the Vault. Hello and welcome to the Monthly Stuff podcast, a special bonus edition. This is not going to be our main show for May. We will have another episode for you in a week or two in case you have not seen The Avengers, which is the movie we are going to be talking about today in detail. Do not listen to any more of this podcast if you have not seen The Avengers. We're going to spoil...
Full super hardcore spoilers.
Yes, and trust us, you don't want any of this movie spoiled for you.
Yes.
Yes. So...
Except for that it's awesome. That can be spoiled a little bit.
Oh,
absolutely. Just go see The Avengers and then listen to the podcast afterwards.
Yes. So, if you haven't seen it, goodbye. Although, chances are you have seen it, because I hear the movie made a little bit of money this weekend.
Yeah, a nice bit of change, I hear.
Yes. And we will definitely get to that probably at the end of the discussion and what that means for future movies and the people involved in this movie and whatnot. But, okay, spoilers will begin now. I am Jonathan Lack.
I'm Sean Chapman.
All right, Avengers.
Assemble! They never said that in the movie. I want to get that out right away. I'm a little disappointed.
I was too. There's the moment near the end where Maria Hill is asking Nick Fury, sir, they've all split up. Mariah Hill? Sorry. How are they going to come back together? They're all on different sides of the universe now and stuff. And I thought Nick Fury was going to say something about assemble there.
Yeah.
Or maybe, hit the assemble button and they'd all appear. I don't know. That ship had a lot of gadgets.
That would be a really weird turn for the movie. Just push the assemble button. Oh, all the Avengers are here now.
Yes. Okay.
I guess that's an out for the writers if they can't figure out how to bring the Avengers back for Avengers 2.
That's true.
Just the assemble button.
I suspect Joss Whedon will find something more creative than that.
Maybe. We'll see.
Well, let's just start. We're going to go in depth here. Probably go character by character. Scene by scene, whatever we want to do to dissect it.
I think if we go scene by scene, this might take a little while.
This will take a little while, yes. But
I'm not sure if I remember precisely every single scene in the movie enough to analyze it.
That's true. Okay, but first off, let's just do general overview reactions to the movie. Sean, what did you think of Marvel's The Avengers?
I thought it was really, really awesome, and probably about as good as an Avengers movie could be, which is really, really awesome.
Yeah. Me too. I gave it an A+ once I saw it a second time, and it's hard to describe what the movie does so well, but I think it is in some ways 2.5 straight hours of just payoff to so many things that have been building over the last 4 years and more, and it's as you said, good as it could be for what of an Avengers movie, what it should be. I don't throw around the word perfect with movies all that much, but I think it's as close to perfect as the movie could be. And I think, quite frankly, I've seen everything that's come out this year. I think it's the best American movie of 2012 so far. So,
okay, I agree, but I've only seen maybe 3 or 4 movies this year. So
yeah. The actually other one in contention would be the other Joss Whedon production of the year, The Cabin in the Woods.
I've seen that, by the way.
You did?
I thought it was okay.
Okay.
I think a lot of people kind of overhyped it, but it was pretty good.
We'll talk about that more on our Cabin in the Woods podcast, which is probably never going to come.
Super mega in-depth, full mega spoilers. That's a movie that definitely you can't talk about without spoiling stuff.
Right.
Okay, we're not talking about Cabin in the Woods, though. We're talking about
Cabin
the
in the Avengers.
Yes,
In the
and
Woods.
I really did hone in on this in my review. Is that I think the Avengers, for me, what made it so impressive is I'm a huge Joss Whedon fan, and he's the guy who wrote and directed this movie. And until the Avengers, he was sort of this, sort of cult figure. Made a lot of stuff that didn't make any money, but people really loved it. The small number of people who saw it, and box office numbers, and he's now the biggest filmmaker in the world. So there's that, which is sort of interesting. But more importantly, I think it's so cool that Marvel gave him the obvious creative freedom he had to make what, in my mind, is not only sort of the ultimate superhero movie, but the ultimate expression of sort of what Joss Whedon does, which is sort of mixing comic book aesthetics and comic book storytelling styles without apologizing for what those are. Not trying to say there's some reason we should be ashamed of what this is, which there is no reason. And then mixing it in with a lot of his own thematic interests about family structures and about how characters bounce off each other and sort of his unique dialogue voice and just understanding all these characters so intimately and understanding how they would all play off each other. And that's one of the biggest surprises for me watching The Avengers is it so easily under other filmmaker or other studio could have ended up sort of a generic big action picture. And I think it ended up being sort of a unique ethereal vision.
I'm not actually. I kind of don't think that I didn't get the Joss Whedon voice as much.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of a good thing that it felt more like a Marvel movie and less like a Joss Whedon movie. Whereas like Cabin in the Woods very much felt more Joss Whedon-y.
Yeah.
So I
agree that he fit in with the
it's
Marvel universe.
I actually think he really toned down like his style of dialogue a lot more, like where it wasn't trying to be quite as witty as he normally does.
That's
I think
true.
Fit the movie a lot better because there were one or two lines of Whedon dialogue that actually I thought kind of annoyed me, mostly Black Widow stuff, but we can get into that.
I love Black Widow in this movie.
Yeah, we'll get into that.
Okay.
We'll move on, but yeah, although I do agree, like Joss Whedon clearly was like the man to make this movie because he definitely understood the comic books and he understands how to write the characters and play the characters.
Well, I'm just saying that I think this is a canvas for him to explore why he was the right choice for this. Is it's a large canvas that explores many of the things he spent his entire career exploring, which is large ensembles and how people who shouldn't be together and be really good at it. And mixing that with sort of, now he's always been good at delivering amazing action sequences. Even the early seasons of Buffy, where they had literally no money, are impressive to watch. And now he just had $200 million, and it's amazing. And so I just think maybe what I'm trying to say is like what you said, he was the right guy to do this for many different reasons. So just trying to give that credit up front. Where do you want to go with this discussion?
I think for me, what the movie really did the best was it understood most of the characters perfectly. Like I only have a little bit of quibbles with the portrayal of Black Widow, but like especially like the main team members like Hulk, Cap, Iron Man, and Thor. They understood the characters were like portrayed so well once again by the actors. Mark Ruffalo I think is now my favorite Hulk. I'm pretty sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
no question.
They definitely did the Hulk better, but even he did Bruce Banner better.
Yeah.
And they just got the relationships of those characters down really well. And what I like that they did is that they really balanced not going too much into individual characters, because if you did that, then it would detract from all the other characters. And they just really balanced, making it so you felt you knew all the characters equally well. You were invested in all the characters and all the characters succeeding, and then also delivering a lot of really kick-ass action.
Yeah.
Because that would be the big struggle with the movie, is that there's no obvious focal point. There's no obvious thing to do when you're making an Avengers movie, because it's an ensemble cast with really, really strong characters. Like, all the characters are strong. All the characters are main characters in their own right. And I think it's just incredibly impressive that they were able to balance all of that out.
And I think part of it is that the writing didn't try to sand out rough edges around how all these characters are from very different worlds.
Yeah.
Even if, only one of them is literally from a different part of the universe. They really do. You walk into the Avengers and, Tony Stark and Captain America share the screen for the first time, and you feel they really have walked on screen out of separate movies. Uh-huh. And that's the thrill of watching it. And I think, what you were just talking about, for me, it's that it feels effortless when you're watching this movie, that you have all these characters and styles together. And it just feels effortless, and that's such a cool trick to be able to do. is to not feel sort of the strain of having to find, okay, well, what should Tony be doing in this moment so that he doesn't feel like too much of the main character, even though he's got the big ego and all this, and, should Captain America, do we need to focus too much on his angst of coming out of the 40s to the 2000s, and just all these different issues.
I mean, and it seems like, because that's not that hard to do, it seems like, in a comic book.
Right.
But especially just, I mean, I think really a huge amount of credit really needs to go to the actors playing those characters, because that has got to be really, really hard to do, just as an actor, where you're playing a main character, but you're also playing a main character with, like, the 4 other, like, major protagonist characters.
Yes.
It's like you don't have that in any sort of standard narrative.
Well, and to think about, what's so weird is they weren't cast for chemistry. You know what I mean? They weren't cast, like, Chris Hemsworth, as far as I know, wasn't auditioned across, like, Robert Downey Jr. To figure out how their chemistry would work. But they all come together, and they just play off each other so friggin' well. And I think that's partially, again, the writing and direction, but also just that the actors were willing to work so hard at that. You're right. So, I really do think the characters, we're probably in agreement here, the character work is the best part of this movie. And then how, when we get into the action, and we're definitely going to have a long discussion of how well the action is done in this movie, but for me what makes the action work is it all comes from organic character interaction.
Yeah.
Again, the action all feels like it's about character first, explosions and punching second. So, let's just go through the characters sort of from top to bottom. Robert Downey Jr., Tony Stark, Iron Man, he's obviously the most known quantity going into this film.
Yeah.
And I really love how they took his character in a slightly different direction here, and they honored the character development of his 2 solo movies.
Yeah.
Where he's more calm, he's in a functional relationship with Pepper Potts, he's not as much of a dick, he's really ready to accept people into his life. Some people, like his relationship with Bruce Banner, which I love.
Yeah.
We'll have to talk about that. And in retrospect, it actually makes me like Iron Man 2 more, because I like that it took him to this point where he's still got the big ego, but it's calmed down enough that he can be part of a team.
Yeah, and like he now is able to function and work with people.
Yeah.
And I do really like how it was just only for a little bit, but they did kind of carry on Iron Man's own little story with him being in a relationship with Pepper Potts, because they kind of hooked up at the very, very end of Iron Man 2. Yeah. And I thought that was cool to see that they weren't afraid of showing that he had his own little character development kind of in between the movies, and just showing that in Avengers it's obviously going to be, I imagine, a big part of what Iron Man 3 is going to be about.
Yeah.
And so that was really cool to see that they weren't afraid of shying away to show that relationship just a little bit, so you get to kind of understand where Tony is at now.
Yeah.
Because he definitely is less narcissistic, and he's definitely a lot more willing to work with people and figure out how to handle these situations.
Yep. And I want to go to talk about the Hulk next, which I feel is going to be one of the longest sessions, but I love so much how they connect Bruce Banner and Tony Stark in this movie that I think you need to do them adjacently. But let's start for a little bit. The only, hassle they had on the way to making the Avengers, which is amazing that this is the only one, is Edward Norton not coming back for Avengers. And ultimately, I think that's a blessing, because not only does recasting, they got, I think, a better actor for the part in Mark Ruffalo, but it also gave them the chance to reorient the character in the writing and find what, to me, is a more meaningful interpretation, or a more powerful interpretation that works with the team. But I want to hear you talk about this one.
Yeah, so for me, like, I do really like Edward Norton in The Incredible Hulk. I think he's really good Bruce Banner. And actually, I think one of the really good things about Edward Norton as Bruce Banner is that he looks a lot like Bruce Banner. Like, he's, like, the only, like, downside a little bit for Mark Ruffalo is that the guy looks a bit too, almost kind of, like, handsome and a bit too, kind of, like, strong.
Yeah.
As Bruce Banner, where Bruce Banner's always, to contrast with the Hulk, he's really, really skinny, and he's this really meek person. But what Mark Ruffalo brings to Bruce Banner is he actually shows there's, like, been insane amounts of character development on that character since The Incredible Hulk, because he's clearly been able to kind of come to terms with the Hulk in himself, and he's kind of able to control it, and he understands his own relationship, and I just love, he has so many little character quirks where I think the biggest strong point is Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner over Edward Norton is that Mark Ruffalo seems like he's more of a genius. Like, he seems like he actually kind of acts more socially awkward, whereas Edward Norton just kind of looks like he's more socially awkward.
Yeah.
But yeah, Mark Ruffalo definitely seems like he's a genius. He really knows what he's doing. And I think that really lends Bruce Banner a stronger presence in the movie. And then especially once he turns into the Hulk, that's just, I always said that they need to make the Hulk talk, and he has one line in the movie. But the more important thing of making the Hulk talk is that making the Hulk seem like he's not just a monster. Like, he's not just something that just goes around and smashing everything without having a single thought in his head, which is how the Hulk was always portrayed in the other movies, with except for, like, one scene in a cave when the rain's going on with Betty.
And that was more they were pulling from, like, King Kong. They weren't pulling from the Hulk.
Yeah, they were definitely doing a King Kong thing there. But with the Hulk, especially in the end of the movie where he hulks out and helps everyone else in the big climactic fight, you get the sense that the Hulk has some form of intelligence. Like, the Hulk is able to recognize people.
And he has a personality more than anything.
The Hulk's... I mean, and one of the things I really like with their Bruce Banner is that he never calls the Hulk, or if he does, he corrects himself. He always calls him the other guy. I like that he... Because that's one of the things in the comic books, that I don't even know if they're still doing this, but for a while they explained away, and Ang Lee's Hulk's movie kind of picked up on this, they explained away him turning into the Hulk less being about gamma radiation and more about him having like a split personality disorder. And that's kind of what it feels like in this movie too, where he's kind of got this split personality thing, where it's like a Hulk is an actual personality. It's not just a crazy monster thing that comes out.
I especially love Mark Ruffalo's probably best moment as a human in the movie is when it's the moment before Loki kind of breaks out in the ship, and there's the scepter, and it's getting the blue glow, and they're all very angry, and he says, I put a gun in my mouth, and the other guy spit the bullet out. And he has, and that admission that, that probably to me is the moment where he started getting over what happened to him. And just have that history, and that he can go to that really dark place and then also be very funny. And I think before we go into talking about the like Hulk, CGI Hulk himself more, let's just finish talking about Bruce Banner as a human, because I really love, like I said, his relation with Tony Stark. And I think part of that is that he has that intelligence that's so down, and Robert Downey Jr. has the same thing. And so when they walk on screen together, you feel like these guys should be hanging out. And they do start hanging out. Tony makes fun of him, the first time, because that's what Tony does to everybody, but it's more affectionate, you can tell. And then I just love that scene where they're working together, and Tony is just trying to convince him that this isn't a curse. What if this is, your strength? Because that's what Tony's gone through.
Yeah. Yeah, I do like how Tony refers to Banner hulking out as putting the suit on.
Yeah.
Where it's like, that's your superhero outfit to Tony. And I do also like how he is just kind of trying to like poke and prod him and get a sort of reaction out of him and trying to understand him.
Yeah.
And I never really felt like Iron Man and the Hulk never really have like a huge chemistry in the comic book, so it's kind of interesting that they bring that out in the movie.
It just made sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. It's actually more kind of like the relationship between Tony and like Mr. Fantastic or something like that. But it is definitely interesting how they bring that out and they really emphasize those two aspects of the character and kind of pair them together.
But I just think there's a lot of sort of heartwarming moments between them where Tony keeps trying to reach out to Bruce, and then that pays off when he becomes the Hulk and saves Tony at the end of the movie and in several other spots. So there's just a lot of that. It made me want not a standalone Hulk movie, but I would like Bruce Banner in one of the Iron Man movies now. I think that would not like he's the co-star and is the sidekick, but just like he says, he invites Bruce Banner to Stark Tower to help him with research and stuff. That would be really cool if in the next Iron Man, and I know this isn't going to happen in 3 at least, but Bruce Banner, was like working there and they hung out in the beginning of the movie or something. I don't know. But it just, makes me want to see more of that relationship. But the Hulk himself, I think you and I talked about this a little bit before the podcast. I know I have seen this movie twice, both with sold-out houses, and the Hulk has gone over so well in both of those. He is the CGI Hulk is basically the biggest star of this movie in terms of audience reaction and what people are talking about when they leave the Avengers. He has just all of the best action beats in the, not maybe all of them, but so many of the best action beats. Every time the Hulk is on screen, it feels like he's not just hulking out because they need a Hulk moment. It's because it's a big moment of the movie that is just, it's so cool to watch the Hulk act, and he has so much personality, and I think that's a combination of the writing and some really fantastic CGI this time out, and that Mark Ruffalo was actually doing the motion capture in the Hulk animation. So it's just, this Hulk feels to me like a real character, even though, as you said, he only has one line. But it's also the moments where I feel like Joss Whedon goes craziest with his action beats, is having the Hulk punch Thor off screen, which is awesome, or the moment that I think is one of the most unexpected moments I've ever seen in a movie, but is so brilliant, where Loki is giving yet another of his big "I am a god" speeches.
Yeah.
Hulk runs up and just smashes the shit out of him so that you can't hear the audio of the movie for a couple minutes for people laughing and cheering, and it's so great. And it just feels like they really took as much advantage of the Hulk as they could in this movie.
Yeah, I agree, and I definitely like how they handled it, where they built the Hulk, like Bruce Banner hulking up for basically the first half of the movie. Yeah. That's always sort of a presence in every single scene Bruce Banner's in, is that there's always this, some people they're afraid that he's going to Hulk out, and they're taking precautions, and you see some of the precautions that S.H.I.E.L.D. has taken at possibly taking down the Hulk. And then when he finally hulks out for the first time and he's putting everyone at risk, you're genuinely frightened of the Hulk because they've kind of built him up like that. But then at the end, you're really cheering for the Hulk because they give this really good sense of the Hulk just being fucking strong as shit.
Yes.
Hulk is strongest one there is. Yes. They really just pound that in your head, and you really get a sense of Hulk kicks some fucking ass in this movie.
His first action beat in that scene is he punches out the giant alien robot
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that everyone was so scared of. And then he says, "I'm always angry."
Yeah.
And that's another applause moment in the theater.
The Hulk it's just they got this really good energy, and the Hulk has some humor to him, and it's just he feels they definitely made it feel like the Hulk fits in with the Marvel with the cinematic universe, whereas with the other Hulk movies, he didn't really. The other Hulk movies have no fun in them. No. Really, they're really dark, and the Hulk needs to have. I mean, there's some really dark moments in this, where he tried to commit suicide.
Yeah,
it's the Hulk has to have some dark moments, but the Hulk himself is also really fun because he's just ridiculously strong and he's pretty fucking stupid. So that creates some really fun moments.
Yes. And I think that's, you can define the whole Avengers movie that way, is that, Joss Whedon recognized this is not a comic book movie where we need to be so serious and dark with it. There need to be dark moments to give it weight, but those need to come organically from the character development. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, it should really just be so much fun to see these characters together. And that's what it does. But the next character I want to talk about is Steve Rogers, Captain America, who, going into the Avengers, was my favorite character in the Marvel Universe. And going out of it, I really don't have a favorite because I like them all so much.
Yeah.
But I was very, very impressed with what they did with Steve Rogers in this movie. I thought they did it perfectly.
Yeah, I think especially my favorite scene was actually his very first scene, which they teased at the end of his own movie, is when he's punching the punching bag, and then and then Nick Fury comes in and gives him the job, and you see kind of they have basically one little scene where he has some flashbacks, and you completely understand what Cap is dealing with. And that he basically, it seems like he takes on the mission just to keep his mind off of all the shit that's going on with him, where he's all of a sudden transplanted 60 years into the future.
Yeah. But I also think Joss Whedon and Chris Evans both understand so much that this character is, he's the captain. He is a military guy. He's the only person besides some of the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents who is truly a soldier. And you clash him against people who are total rogues like Thor and Iron Man, and to a certain extent, Bruce Banner and Nick Fury, and he's so straight-laced because he's still got these 40 sensibilities in him, and it's just fascinating in some parts to watch how he bounces off these characters. And of course he and Tony Stark are going to clash right off the bat because Tony has none of that in him, although he discovers it by the end. That's a really good arc for Tony.
Yeah.
But I just think the amount of authority that Chris Evans has in this part and the amount of authority that's in the writing of the part is really entertaining to watch, especially when they're in this huge apocalyptic situation. Mm-hmm. And I just love watching it. And I love the organic humor that they sort of mine out of it with him not understanding modern references and stuff.
That's a really great scene. Yeah.
I got that one. Flying monkeys.
I get that reference. It's that's another little moment where it's I just really like how they don't dwell on the sort of drama that Cap's going through. Where, clearly that needs to be dealt with in his own movie. Because that's such a huge issue that clearly could have overshadowed, the entire film.
Well, Joss Whedon has said he did have, a scene where he talks to a really old Peggy Carter and stuff before he realized that's overwhelming it. You can't have that much of one character, because that's too dramatic. It would throw the balance off.
Yeah, and but there are still those like few little moments, like his first scene, and then that where he has just one line, one little joke, where he's the only one who gets the reference to the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
Because that's the only like pop culture reference he gets, because everyone's making these jokes and he has no idea what they're talking about. And so you get these like just little moments.
And we know Steve Rogers likes the movies. He went to the newsreels in his movie. So who knows? Maybe he was at the Wizard of Oz in that movie, in that scene.
Okay.
We don't know. That would be interesting. I'm just
kidding. I guess.
I'm theorizing.
No.
I also want to talk about the Captain America. I mean, Captain America is the most closely well, I guess Thor is just superpowered all the time and everything.
Yeah.
But Captain America 2, his style doesn't like shift into that style like the other guys do to a certain extent.
What are you talking about?
Well, I'm saying Iron Man has to put on the suit. Bruce Banner becomes the Hulk and everything. But with him, so there's not really the superheroics to talk about in the way there are with those other two. But the suit itself in this one, I really loved the design of the Captain America costume. I like that they put the hat on him now, or the cap, the hood. And I like that they made it even more bright and brightly colored. And, they went away from maybe the uber-realistic version of the uniform that they were trying to go for in the Captain America solo movie, but I just thought it looked great, especially with this sort of color scheme of the Avengers itself.
Yeah,
I was really impressed by that costume. And actually, my favorite shot in the movie is when he and Iron Man are fighting together at the opera, and there's just that shot where they come into the frame for the first time together, and it's a low angle on them, and Cap's got his hood on, and Iron Man's in full costume, and they're just sort of looking down at Loki. It's just a great moment, and it's the costumes of both of them and the coloring. It's really cool.
Yeah, I agree. And I like how they've started developing Cap into more of the sort of hard-laced Captain America that he is in, like, the comic books now. Where, like, Captain America... It's like, even though Captain... Like, it's kind of like what you're saying. It's like Captain America's... He has powers, but he doesn't... He's not a god. He can't, like, fly around like Iron Man. He's not the Hulk. I mean, he's really, really strong. He's really, really fast. He's got good reflexes, but... Even with all of that, even though he's not the most powerful guy, Captain America is the one dude you do not want to fuck with, because he knows how to fuck you up more than anyone else, because he's been through more shit than anyone. And you definitely kind of get that sense where of all the team members, what he really brings to the table is his experience.
And his leadership.
Yeah, and his leadership and his military experience, where he's been in the shit in World War II.
Yeah. And
so you really get the sense that, and I do definitely like they develop him as a leader, and they develop him kind of... And I also like how he's not just... There is kind of a pressure with Captain America, since he is so kind of straight-laced, and he's Captain America. He goes with the American government. That's how you'd feel like it. But he doesn't just kind of become a patsy for S.H.I.E.L.D., which is something I was kind of afraid of they would go with that, where he would just kind of follow Nick Fury's orders. But Captain America definitely feels like he's his own entity, and he's embodying the American principles, like what he believes in his own way, and not just following what the man up top says.
Yeah.
And that's how Captain America is in the comic books, and I like that, where Captain America fights for his own ideals, and fights for kind of the true American ideals, per se.
Yes.
And not just following orders.
And I mean, there is a good underlying theme that makes the movie feel kind of timely, with S.H.I.E.L.D. doing some bad shit. Yeah. And I love the moment where Tony has done his way of trying to find out the truth, where he's hacking the S.H.I.E.L.D. computers, but... Steve Rogers, he walks out, he thinks about what Tony said, and he says, fuck it, he just walks downstairs and looks for evidence.
Yeah.
And he's ready to do that because he knows there's a higher sort of calling he's working for than just these people he's with. And I think there's so much payoff for all the characters in that last 40-minute action sequence, but Steve Rogers may be my favorite in that scene just because you see how willing he is to put others above himself and just be the leader and the strategist and make the tough calls that need to be made in that scene. And I love the payoff where Tony Stark says, Captain, you give the orders. He's sort of putting his ego second and letting Captain take over. And so in the last war scene, Captain is really in charge, and he's just holding this one street while everyone else does everything, all the big stuff around him. But he still feels like there's so much weight to what he's doing for the team. Because not only is he holding off and saving people, he's making sure everyone's in the right place at the right time because he understands strategy in a way the others don't. So that's how he contributes in the action, and it's really impressive.
Yeah.
And I guess this is a good chance to also talk about this. where obviously, Captain America's action style is so different from Iron Man's, which is all about high tech and flying and those sorts of things, or Thor's. And you really do get this sense whenever they go into battle, it's a unique action style we're watching.
Yeah.
Captain America on that street, sometimes mixed with Black Widow and Hawkeye, is a very down-to-earth style where you've got the shield, and they, again, make great use of the shield. And then, you can, cut to Iron Man, and it's like, oh, now we're watching an Iron Man movie. And it's
it's just, one of the things they did really well, especially in the action, is that you definitely can just all the characters have their own unique fighting style. All the characters have their own unique look. It's like you understand in the action what's going on, who is who and who's doing what to who, and you get a good sense of what's actually going on because they didn't. Like you said, it's like they didn't hold back and have Captain America have this really watered down sort of generic military uniform. It's like he's in the Stars and Stripes. He's out there big blue and red guy. It's like you just can recognize him. You can pick him out in the crowd, and he's completely distinct from all the other heroes. Same with all the other heroes. It's like they all have their own unique visual identity and their own unique fighting style, and that really helps the action.
Okay, so let's talk about Thor now. What did you think of Thor in this movie?
I still think Thor. I think
great.
he's just as great as he was in his own movie. And the one thing I wish he had put on his helmet at one point in time. When he was going into the last fight, I wish he had put on his helmet. I was kind of a little disappointed he didn't have his helmet with the wings.
Hey, but you got way more of Loki in his helmet in this movie.
Yeah, we can talk about that a little bit, but
we should talk about Loki and Thor together. But let's start just with Thor.
Yeah, and he's got. I mean, he just feels like Thor. I mean, he talks the way that Thor talks. He's got that really kind of old English. They make that really funny joke with Iron Man, where when Iron Man first
Shakespeare in the
encounters
Park.
Thor, it's like, "What do you think this is, mortal? Shakespeare in the Park?"
Yeah. Well, and they really heighten the Shakespearean aspects of his speech style in this movie.
Yeah, especially when he's talking to Loki. Yeah, it's
I am not in a gaming mood, brother.
Yeah, and it's just they don't, because it's exactly how he talks in the comic books. So it's they definitely are not, just like with the Thor movie, they're not afraid of doing Thor. It's the same with all the characters, and what makes this movie so great is that they're not afraid of making the characters who the characters are.
Yeah. It's so good. And I think, Thor probably, of the main four Avengers, has the least screen time or sort of arc over the movie.
Yeah,
but I don't feel he got cheated at all. He's just naturally, he's from a different part of the universe. Mm-hmm. He can't interact with these people the same way they can in some ways.
And then plus, he does have... and he does have the biggest relationship with the villain.
Yes.
And he has one, he has the best scene with Loki where
Absolutely.
When he and Loki first encounter each other and they're talking to each other. And so, and his character arc basically feels like it's carried over from the Thor movie.
Yeah.
They're kind of continuing that conflict with him and Loki.
They are, and I'm really excited now to see Thor 2 because Loki lived through this movie.
Yeah.
Which I'm glad about, and I think they could do so many fascinating things with Loki now, where, they could almost do a sort of Benjamin Linus on Lost thing, making him into, he was a horrible person, but maybe almost calming him down and seeing if he could work with Thor at all. I don't know. But I'm interested to see where they take him. But yeah, I really love where they took Thor in this movie, and one of the most impressive things about the story of the Avengers, which I think we'll get into later, is that it feels like a sequel to all of the Marvel movies in some way. It incorporates something from each universe, but really, it's most directly a sequel to Thor, because it has so many of the elements of Thor in it, and everything S.H.I.E.L.D. is doing is reactionary to Thor, and it means, Thor may not have the most screen time, but he may have the most weight in that way. But
plus, he has that really awesome fight with Hulk.
Yes,
I love that. I don't know. One of the things I do like about this is kind of a tangent, but one of the things I love about the movie is that they do. It's this unspoken rule in comic books that whenever two heroes from two different comic books meet up with each other, they always have to fight each other for 3 pages, and then they get on with what they're doing. It happens with every fucking comic book. If you've got and there's always the cover of the comic book will always be Nightwing with special appearance by Batgirl, and on the fucking cover it's Nightwing fighting Batgirl, and it's 3 pages in the comic they're fighting for basically no fucking reason, and then they get on with the plot and they do the same thing in this movie.
Yeah. Well, I think they most shamelessly do that, but wonderfully when Thor appears in the movie on the ship, and he's just trying to help, but no one is willing to just sit down and listen about it, except Captain America, who's just trying to calm these two assholes down, in his view.
Yeah.
And they get that fight in the forest, which is so awesome, just letting all these giant personalities bounce off each other. And I love with Thor, when he's fighting Iron Man, he's obviously in control. He's holding back. Mm-hmm. And then with Hulk, it's so cool that they've made Hulk into someone who can actually fight Thor. Because one of the biggest challenges with Thor is he's a god. How do you get him down to this mortal level where he would be helping these people? Mm-hmm. And until the final fight, you have to have something like Hulk, where he's the only guy who can fight Hulk on that ship.
Yeah.
And even then, he can't do it all that well because Hulk is a fucking monster.
Hulk is the strongest one there is.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
although also, like, I just want to talk about with the fight in the forest. I think that has one of my favorite, just like coming from like the comic books, one of the favorite moments where like they kind of, if you're a fan of the comic books, they draw on something really subtly where it's the moment, it's like it's the climax of that fight where Thor's coming down, he's bringing the hammer down, and you see it's going down on Cap's shield, and knowing that what Cap's shield is made out of vibranium, which it basically like it'll just like reflect any energy it takes in, like so that's what makes his shield completely indestructible. And so knowing that when I see Thor's hammer going down, I'm like, oh shit, do not bring down the hammer of Thor onto a vibranium shield. That doesn't go well together.
Well, and even
like I thought they were going to break the fucking world for a second.
Well, and I actually got a similar feeling because even though I don't read the comics, they did a good enough job establishing what the vibranium shield is in the Captain America movie that I remembered that detail. I'm like, wait a second, that's not going to end well.
Yeah, that's going to make a big bang. That's not good.
Nope. And then there's some funny jokes there, too, where he fires lightning at Tony Stark, and Jarvis says, "Sir, we are at 400% capacity." Oh, great!
Yeah.
It's awesome. But Thor's brother, obviously, Loki, is the villain in this movie, and fucking hell, Tom Hiddleston got even better for this movie.
I just love how like Loki's little character development, where he seemed a little bit crazy in Thor movie. In this, he seems like he's completely unhinged now.
Yeah,
like he seems like even though he's still capable of being like the god of mischief and he's manipulating people, which is how Loki should be. It's like you still get the sense it's like this character got fucking crazy somewhere between the two movies. Like now he's basically insane.
Yes.
Whereas before, it's like was more of a tragic figure, and now it's like something that was like Loki's kind of fucked up now.
Yeah, it's great, and I love that they open the movie establishing him instead of opening with the Avengers themselves. Yeah. And it's just, that's a disturbing opening where he comes in, and that look on his face in his first shot is just brilliant. That you can tell he's unhinged right from the start. Yeah. And then he goes after, Hawkeye and Stellan Skarsgård's character, and, it's just a disturbing and unsettling scene to watch, and I just love all of Loki's material in this movie. And Tom Hiddleston also he's so good at playing off others, so his sort of sense of ego and everything can become a joke to other people.
Yeah.
It's that scene between him and Tony Stark is fantastic.
Yeah.
Near the end of the movie. And I even love sort of how he, at the end, accepts defeat when they've all got, at the end of the battle, they all go to fight him, and he says, if it makes no difference to you, I'd like that drink now.
Yeah.
So he's just really good throughout the movie, and having him and Thor together gives so much weight to that conflict. Because we know, if you've seen Thor, you know how much is at stake there just personally for these two. So.
Yeah, and also, Loki is in his battle helmet, for half the movie, and it's awesome. Uh-huh. It's like, of any of the costumes, that you could pick, Loki's is one of the lamest costumes in all of comic bookdom. I mean, he's got the helmet with the two giant fuck-off horns coming out the top that, wrap around over to the top of his head.
They looked even bigger in this movie.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, because I'm pretty sure they made them bigger.
Yeah.
It's just... I just love that they... Because I thought, when the Thor movie was coming out, I thought that they weren't even going to do that costume at all. But it's like, they did it in the Thor movie, and then they brought it back, twofold for this one. So, I'm guessing... in Thor 2, he's going to be wearing it literally the entire movie, is what I'm hoping, if they continue that arc.
The movie's going to start, and he'll be in a cell, and Thor will come to visit him, and he's like, I do have to thank you, brother, for letting me keep my costume. And he's like, it's okay, I know it makes you happy. Yeah. So, I just love, and I think we'll get into the actual like villainous force in the movie, the Chitauri, in a little bit. But they're basically a faceless villainous army.
Yeah.
And so Loki is the villainous face of the movie, and he is very compelling because his motives are very clear. He's not just doing this for the hell of it. He wants to get back at Thor, and he wants to feel in power.
Yeah.
And he needs humans because he doesn't understand the value in humanity. He just wants to feel powerful over them. And there's the great scene where he's at the opera. And it starts with a disturbing moment where I really love. They have just the string quartet playing over all that's going on, and he makes them bow down to him. And then, of course, you have to have Captain America come in and give a speech about World War II.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
And then in that scene, I love. That's what I think my favorite character introduction is Iron Man coming in, and he plays AC/DC over like the intercom system, and then he comes down. That was a great moment.
Yep.
Like I wonder if it's like if they continue then Iron Man 3, because they kind of did a similar thing in Iron Man 2, where his character introduction in Iron Man 2. I hope in Iron Man 3, every single time Iron Man walks on screen,
Iron Man?
Yeah, some AC/DC song will be playing.
Yes. So I hope they can work You Shook Me All Night Long in there someday. So, all right. So that's, okay, we've got two more of the actual, like, Avengers teammates.
Symbol.
Yes. So we have, do you want to do Black Widow or Hawkeye?
Let's do Hawkeye.
Okay. Hawkeye is probably the least developed, probably for good time reasons.
Yeah.
But, man, is he awesome in this movie.
I love like, Jerry, even though, he doesn't have, like, he has almost no dialogue. Like, he barely says anything in the whole movie.
He doesn't need to.
Yeah, it's like he doesn't need to. Jeremy Renner just has, like, that sort of presence to Hawkeye, and I like how he definitely feels like he's this sort of, like, elite, like, military sniper. Like, he's kind of this loner guy, but he kicks some ass. And I love what they did with his trick arrows, because I've never seen this before. It's a really cool idea that his, like, the shafts on the arrows that connect to, like, the trick heads in the quiver, basically, and it's, like, this mechanical thing that he can select whichever, like, arrowhead he wants for that situation.
And they spend very little time showing you how it works, but the design of the bow and arrow is so good. Whoever designed that deserves an award or something. Yeah. Because as soon as you see it, you understand the function of it, and you just want to see more of it, and they give you plenty of it in the last battle. And I love how resourceful he is, too, and silently. Like, in the end, he's out of arrow shafts, and he jumps off the building, gets another one, and saves himself. It's just, I love how much that bow can do. I just love how badass his character is. And I think they do at least do some good shadings with him, where after he's been mind controlled and everything, which is actually where they sort of establish his power, because they don't have time. It's sort of a clever thing they do, where they have him be one of the mind controlled minions, so they can establish his power when they don't have time to establish his character.
Yeah,
and then they take the time to establish his character when there's a downtime in the movie.
Mm-hmm. And I really like how, even though Hawkeye doesn't have, like, actual powers, they make it feel like he's just as, like, he should be on the team. You feel like he's not just, like, this, like, random Joe who doesn't really contribute anything. Because, I mean, they do introduce him as, when he's mind-controlled, they introduce him as a pretty compelling and effective villain when he's infiltrating the S.H.I.E.L.D. base, because of the S.H.I.E.L.D. helicarrier, because that's what he's good at.
That's a scary scene when he's, like, getting his arrow ready,
But then also, in the last fight, he gets the orders from Captain America, where you go up on the rooftop, and you basically coordinate the team, and, like, you're the sniper, you can see what's going on with everyone, and, like, help them out, and give them basically fire support, so you feel like he's a compelling force at the end of the final battle.
Yeah.
That has to be a tricky thing to do when you're, like, with fucking a robot guy, the Hulk, and a god.
Well, and also I think there would have been the temptation under a director maybe who didn't love the characters this much to make the secondary Avengers truly secondary.
Yeah.
But Joss Whedon doesn't. Hawkeye is an equal member of the team. He may not get as much screen time in the early going, but in the battles and everything, he is. If you took him out, they would lose.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I don't know how you feel about this, but I also really liked sort of the friendship, or I don't know if it's a friendship as much as a sort of companionship thing. Well, not companionship because it's not romantic, but I'm just trying to say his relationship with Black Widow, I thought was neat in how they're
a little bit romantic. I mean, that's kind of, they get it on sometimes.
They do? Okay.
Yeah.
I just thought in this movie they were shying away from that, and more of these are two people who are so good at what they do, and they respect each other for it, and they value each other for that. And I liked how their relationship played, and I actually would really like a spin-off movie with those two teaming up.
Yeah, I agree. I think that would be better than just having a Hawkeye movie or just having a Black Widow movie. I think it would be better to have them.
And Jeremy Renner and Scarlett Johansson are fantastic together in their scenes. So, and one last thing on Hawkeye before we leave is it's sort of like, you were talking about Jeremy Renner and how good he does just silently with his physicality and his mind and everything. Have you seen The Hurt Locker?
Yeah, I have.
Okay, I feel like if you've seen The Hurt Locker, that's exactly why they cast him, because that's what that whole movie is for him.
Yeah.
And he's so fucking brilliant in that movie, and he brings all of that here. And I love that they get really good actors like that to play these superheroes, and that we're at a point in superhero movie history where that's not looked down upon. For Academy Award nominee Jeremy Renner to go play Hawkeye and give it the exact same amount of sort of charisma and everything that he gave to The Hurt Locker. So,
although I should mention that Hawkeye is the only one who isn't really wearing like his original costume.
I saw his original costume on Wikipedia. I'm glad they changed it.
Because it's like bright purple. He's got like this hood on it that has like a big H on the front. Yeah, and although I don't like, I'm not a huge Hawkeye fan. Like he's not he's like basically kind of a B or C list superhero. But like I definitely get the sense that it's like of all the heroes, it's like he's the one who shouldn't be wearing the bright purple costume, because it's like it fits his character much more to be. He's basically wearing a S.H.I.E.L.D. uniform. It's got like a little touch of purple on it.
It's still distinctive, though. It's a distinctive costume.
Yeah, because I mean, the only other person who's wearing a similar looking costume is Scarlett Johansson, and
speaking of,
and you can kind of like see the difference of them pretty quickly.
Yeah,
even though they're both basically just wearing black.
And Scarlett Johansson definitely has a distinctive costume, and God bless her for it. But let's talk about Black Widow. I want to go first because I think, I have a different, obviously, background with all these characters.
Yeah.
And I have no knowledge of what Black Widow is like in the comics or anything. Mm-hmm. But I just thought, I found her really compelling in this movie. I like that they added a lot of shadings to her. They gave her a good amount of screen time. They gave her a pretty compelling character arc, too, of someone, sort of, you get this idea of her being a rogue without, sort of a, woman without a nation or something, and then sort of finding something to fight for before the end, sort of in her relationship with Hawkeye. Mm-hmm. And it's not necessarily fighting for him, but learning, to sort of selflessness. It's the same thing Tony Stark goes through in the movie to a certain degree, even though Tony is pretty inclined to fight for others, but, his whole thing is the nuke and sacrificing himself. But anyway, that's not the point. But I just really found her compelling. I think Joss Whedon is really good at writing and directing for female characters, obviously, and I think he's good at directing for a actress like Scarlett Johansson, who does need good direction to be a good actress. I think you look at her in some of the movies that are sort of weaker films with weaker filmmakers, she's not good in them, but when you get sort of a strong voice commanding her, she can be a really effective actress, and I think that's what we get here. And again, I love all the action beats with her. I think she's, again, you get a really good sense of what she brings to the team. And that's just, I really liked watching every scene she was in. But you have problems with?
Yeah, I mean, I should say it's like she's my least favorite of all the characters in the movie, and I think not to like say that she's really bad or it's like, oh, that's terrible, because I mean, I really love the movie and I think they did her well. I just think it's kind of, and I don't even really know Black Widow that well. I mean, she's a really confusing character to follow because she's in all the like secret agent type stuff. But she's kind of, it's like, just like, of all the heroes, like, Scarlett Johansson and that Black Widow doesn't feel really like Black Widow to me. Part of it is because she doesn't have a Russian accent, and I find that really distracting, especially, she, like, has this, like, she has the scene with Loki, and I do love the thing where they have she's interrogating people when they really think that they're interrogating her. That's a very Black Widow type thing.
And that scene with Loki is so good.
Yeah, that's a really good scene.
That's Tom Hiddleston just scaring the shit out of everyone.
Yeah, it's like they pulled the fucking scene out of Silence of the Lambs. Like, it's like really creepy. And I really like that. And I like that aspect of the character, that they make her seem really intelligent and like just really good at manipulating people, because that's kind of how she is. But she like has this line, I don't even remember what the setup of the line is, but she says like basically like, oh, I'm Russian. And when she says that, it's like, no. It's like, you don't, like, I mean, Black Widow should have, like, a huge Russian accent. Like, it should almost be distracting how much of a Russian accent Black Widow has.
Well, I can understand, though, functionally, how when you're working in an ensemble, that could be a character trait that could overwhelm. That's
I guess, but it's like, I don't know, it's just like, it seemed really distracting to me, and, like, I don't know, like, I think it would have, it's just like an element of the character where, I mean, she's basically, like, the basis of her character really is this, like, stereotype of, like, the Cold War spy movie, basically, is where Black Widow comes from. And I think that's really what the heart of the character is to me. And so it feels like that kind of got away from it. And also, like, I'm not saying, like, I completely recognize that, like, for someone like you where it's like that wouldn't be a factor at all because you'd have no idea who Black Widow is.
Yeah.
I recognize that, like, that it's a really well done character and it's really compelling in its own right. But for me, it's kind of distracting where it is away from the comic books.
Okay.
And then also it kind of felt like
that.
she had like, I think she had 2 lines that I really didn't like. Not just, like, the Russian one, but she had 2, like, really Whedon lines of dialogue where it's, like, a bit too Whedon-y. Where there was, like, one where she's, it's in the last fight, and it's, like, it's Iron Man saying, it's like, I'm bringing the party to you, and he's bringing in the big, like, robot thing, and she's saying, how's that a party? That was a cringeworthy line. That was like,
okay.
Oh, that should not be coming out of Black Widow's mouth.
I can understand.
That's like a Buffy line. That's
I was
the line
about
you
to
give
say
to
that.
Buffy.
I saw Sarah Michelle Gellar in my head when she said that.
Like, how's that a party? It's like, oh god, that was kind of what I was saying when it's like that. It felt like a Marvel movie to me, and when like that line comes up, it's like, oh, that's a Whedon movie. It's like that did not gel. It's like, oh, that was. So it's like, and
okay, you have to sacrifice one line to get a brilliant movie. I think you can live with that.
Well, yeah, I was just saying. It's like I'm obviously really nitpicking here.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're doing a spoiler
of course,
podcast.
that's what this is for.
I'm a nerd. It's like that's what I'm good at is nitpicking stuff. But yeah, it's like so. I think like Black Widow would be the weakest one, but it's also not a
huge deal.
Yeah, it's not a huge deal.
I don't know if I ever could rank the 6 Avengers in this movie. She would be closer to the top for me, and I think we're in agreement on a lot of things with the character though. So it's just personal preference to a certain point and your own history with the characters and stuff. So yeah, but I'm looking forward to seeing more of all of these characters. But there's a few other characters in the movie, namely from S.H.I.E.L.D., and I don't know how much there is to say about Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury. I wrote in my review, I was like, how do I describe his performance? And I was like, he's just as Samuel L. Jackson he is ever.
Yeah.
Because that's what he is, and he does it very well, and he's perfect.
It's that great scene where it's in the climactic fight, and they're on the helicarrier, and then the order gets for the nuke, and the jets are taking off, and then it just like cuts to Samuel L. Jackson walking out with a fucking RPG, and he blows up the jet. It's like, that is awesome.
What I loved even more was he realizes there's 2. He has only one RPG, so he throws it away, and
then he pulls out his pistol.
And then he the look on his face is perfect because he judges. He's like, no, I can't do it.
It's like there's a moment where he thinks he might be able to take out a jet with just his like sidearm.
And you need Samuel L. Jackson for that moment,
yeah,
because he can go wacky enough to really pull that off. It's great. So yeah, I mean, is there anything else to say with his character beyond?
It's like he's just like because he's not like a huge like force in the movie, but it's like he's definitely there in Samuel L. Jackson when you need a Samuel L. Jackson.
Yes.
So.
Well, and I mean, his role is hugely developed in this movie. It's much bigger.
Yeah.
And, I think that maybe there was a slight question mark is he going to be as good when he has this much screen time? And it's yes, and he gives the weight he needs to those parts. He feels like he's in command. And he's got great chemistry with the cast.
Yeah.
So, Colby Smulders is Mariah Hill? Mariah Hill? Okay. You don't get she's a very minor character, but I liked her presence.
She's definitely here to be built up in the next movies because she's got an arc in the comic books where she takes over for.
But do you get a sense that Colby Smulders is good casting?
Yeah, I think so.
Thought so.
Yeah, it's like she didn't have enough for me to really get a sense of the character, but it's like for her being there, she's good. Yeah,
like I said, I just liked her presence in the scenes that she's in. She just felt again with the sense of weight and fleshing out the universe. Yeah. I mean, you could have really, given how small the role is in this movie, gotten sort of a throwaway actress.
It could have been anyone, but they're definitely building up this role to be something in the other movies.
Yeah, that was good. But obviously the big supporting character, and God rest his soul, Clark Gregg as Phil Coulson. Clark Gregg is still alive.
I'm not convinced that Coulson is dead either.
Okay, you can never be convinced of this, but within the context of the movie,
they didn't show they probably didn't show a dead body.
Okay.
Coulson's probably not dead. I'm just going to say that.
Okay. I think people think he's dead. I think they could.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah.
Okay. I don't think there's a conspiracy like Samuel L. Jackson hid his body and revived it.
Well, I think maybe Nick Fury actually lied to them about him being dead. I'm saying that's a possibility to get them to.
Well, and I would actually be a little perturbed by that.
I don't think they should do it, but I think that's what they're going to do.
Okay.
I'm just saying.
That's how I'm calling it. They did it so well in this movie, and that again, That's a totally Whedon moment, is killing one of your big characters to kick off the final act.
Mm-hmm.
And you need to do it. And that's one of the things he's brought to all his movies, that he's always unpopular with some sects of the fandom for that.
Yeah.
Like which characters he's killed in Buffy, in Serenity, killing 2 characters. But you need to do it to give the final act weight. And you need to give the Avengers something worth fighting for. And actually, it explains their name in this movie, too, that they're avenging.
Yeah, I do really love that, how he's about, like, this is, like, his last line is, like, they need something to...
Yeah.
And then it, like, kind of trails off, and he doesn't actually ever, like, say it.
Yeah.
But it's like, you know exactly what he's going to say.
And, I mean, we talked about on the last podcast about the Marvel movies, we've both loved Clark Gregg and Agent Coulson. He came out of left field to be this character everyone fell in love with. Mm-hmm. And, I did not expect him to die at all in this movie, but when it comes, it's a big moment. And I think the second time I saw it, and I knew what was coming, and no one else did, when he gets the spear through the heart from Loki, everyone in my theater went, oh! It was like that big, like, everyone was so sad for Agent Coulson, and it works really well.
And especially in that, where they develop him more than he's ever been, because they have the scene with him and Pepper Potts and Iron Man at the beginning of the movie, and, like, you get a sense of more of him.
I thought your first name was Agent.
It's like Pepper calls him Phil. And then also, I love that he has Captain America trading cards, and you just definitely get the sense where, like, he is, like... Phil Coulson he's definitely aspiring to be Captain America, where it's like, he's like this very by-the-book agent. And it's
I sort of read it as he's either sort of a sounding board for Joss Whedon or for the fans themselves. He's that representation of people who love these characters so much that they would, die for. They would die to be with them and to help them, and it's just really, fun.
But yeah, it's also just, he's like, I just love, because Phil, like, Coulson, he's so polite and, like, mild-mannered all the time, and it's like, it definitely kind of feels like it comes from his love of Captain America.
Yeah.
And he just, like, has that one little moment where he nerds out with him.
Yep. And, so I don't know if there are any other major characters worth talking about. Stellan Skarsgård, I'm glad to have him in any movie. He, obviously, the scientist character is not major in this, but... when you get to the end, there is some payoff there that he was smart enough to build in the failsafe. And I think if you had just a random scientist there, that would feel like a cop-out. But because we know it
definitely feels like it was smart. Because it's kind of like with Mariah Hill. It's like you can just have this random throwaway person because it's not a huge role in the movie. But especially with him being from Thor, you get a sense of the character without having to spend too much time if you've seen the Thor movie.
And I should note, I really like that they didn't forget continuity from any of the movies. Like, Thor does ask about Jane Foster. They don't just ignore that. They don't ignore these aspects of the continuity. Gwyneth Paltrow is always great, and it's really, that scene feels like a scene from one of the Jon Favreau Iron Man movies.
Yeah,
where they're together. And I love Stark Tower. I want to see Stark Tower in Iron Man 3. Mm-hmm. That was a cool set. And a cool idea, so...
They were kind of setting it up that it's going to be Avenger Tower. I'm kind of sad that they're not going to live in Avengers Mansion, which is where they did in the comic books. Yeah. Which always seems like a really lame... It's like you got like a Bat Cave, you've got the Baxter Building, which is like the huge tower that the Fantastic Four live in, and you got like the Avengers Mansion. And they're like... it seems like they're supposed to be like playing golf or something on their spare time.
I would like that as like a post-credit scene for one of the movies. Okay. So we've talked about all the characters. Are there any sort of specific... We talked about some character interactions. Are there any other, like, relationships you want to talk about? Because for me, I don't know if we need to get in depth on all of them, but I feel like in the writing, Joss Whedon really sat down and thought about every permutation of the Avengers. Yeah. And how would, for instance, how is Thor going to react to Tony Stark? How is Tony Stark going to react to Captain America? How is Black Widow going to react to Tony Stark? All these... Or Bruce Banner to Black Widow, just all these different permutations you can have. And then when you put them together, even if there isn't a focus on it, it always feels very thoughtful how they interact. And I really like that. So is it time to talk about the action?
Sure.
Sequences? Okay. It's sort of funny, you could overwhelm the discussion of the action in this movie with just the last 40 minutes, because they're so good it's easy to forget that there are other all-time great action sequences in this movie. There's the fight in the forest, and then more notably the fight on the helicarrier is incredible. And I think in all of these cases, especially the last 2 big sequences, the sense of space is so good, where it's, some people have made a really weird comparison between this and Transformers that I do not get, because Transformers is incoherent.
Yeah, for me, it's like, I can see the comparison.
They're big.
But the comparison is that Transformers is shit. Avengers is doing what Transformers should have done.
Yes.
Avengers is like Transformers done right. It's like if Transformers had been like Avengers, it would be like as good as it could possibly be.
Yes, and so in Avengers you have all these characters and their own styles, and it's on a big canvas. They make sure every time the Avengers have to go into action in this movie, there's a reason for all of these giant superheroes to need to work together. Mm-hmm. And on that helicarrier, obviously, it's their own actions that have led them to that point. They're sort of paying for it, and it's just amazing because, again, it's in both cases, if you took out any one of the Avengers, they would all lose and die in that situation. And so, you've got Iron Man is working on the rotors and everything, and the technical side of it, and you've got Captain America just trying to hold down the fort with his sort of strategy and his gun skills and whatnot, and then Thor has to hold off Hulk just smashes shit. Black Widow is trying to save Hawkeye, and it's just the sense of, again, space, because they've spent so much time in the movie already establishing what that helicarrier is, that by the time you get to the part where they're tearing the whole fucking thing apart, it's just really exciting.
Yeah, I agree. It definitely does, because that's something really important, especially when you have, because almost all the action scenes in the movie really are like 5 different action scenes happening at the same time, just in like this around the same area.
Yeah,
and they definitely give a good sense of like how these fights are like interacting with each other, like where they are on this place, like what's going on in the big picture and what's going on with like the individual character interactions.
Yes.
And that's got to be really tricky to do, to balance. I mean, it's just another facet of having all these characters together.
Yeah.
Is that they all have to be doing something, and you have to know what they're doing.
Yes.
At any given moment.
And I saw a good comparison on the internet the other day from a review from a like sort of Joss Whedon fan who said it reminded me of some of Joss Whedon's sequences on Buffy, specifically the season 5 finale at the construction tower, where obviously it's a much lower budget and everything, but that's, Buffy at that point, we knew all these characters so well and their abilities, and so they all got these big payoff moments like that. And so, or in Serenity, the action climax to that.
Yeah.
And so you can see, again, why, those qualifications really go to work here with putting that all together. Okay, and then we get to the city itself, and New York, and the final big fight, and I have been thinking about this for a couple of days, wondering whether I actually want to go with this level of hyperbole, but fuck it, I really do think this. I think that is the greatest blockbuster action sequence I have ever seen in a movie, with the possible exception of Helm's Deep in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I haven't... Huh.
I mean, is that fair, at least?
I mean, for me, like, I know you haven't seen it, but for me, and I wouldn't call this like a blockbuster action movie, but for me, the best action scene I've ever seen, especially for like a huge one, is the end of Seven Samurai. I know you haven't seen it, and that's not anywhere near to this scale, but it's still.
And I'm specifically talking about like blockbusters.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. It's like
summer movies.
Yeah, I just, especially of a fight on that scale where it's like a citywide fight. That's definitely the best I've ever seen it done. Like I would say the only thing I'm a little disappointed with, and this is another nitpick, and I don't even think necessarily they should have done this, but it was kind of something I was expecting and a little bit disappointed that I didn't see it, was having just a big fight with Loki, which doesn't really make sense because Loki can't be that, but I kind of just wish there was like
Thor and Loki still got a big fight.
Yeah, they got a big fight, but I mean like all the Avengers together, like teaming up on one like big dude, and there was like, that would have been the whole movie. It's like, I know why they didn't do that.
Because Loki, I think, in a certain sense, he's established as a psychological villain.
Yeah, I'm saying it's like they shouldn't have all gotten together and just fought Loki, because Loki's not a physical villain.
Yeah.
Just like, I just kind of wish there's... I mean, that has to happen in the Avengers 2 now. There has to... And they kind of
they're setting it up.
Yeah, they set it up with, like...
Thanos. Okay.
Anyways, we can talk about Thanos later.
But my point about the city scene, and I think we're in agreement on this, is that every action beat in that scene would be the big climax to a lesser movie. It would be like the big satisfying holy shit moment, and there's like 50 of them.
Yeah.
All rolled into one. And it's just, like, thinking about it gets me giddy, because you watch that scene and it's like, I can't believe what I'm watching. I don't even know how... I can't even begin to imagine on a technical level how you do that. It's unbelievable.
It's insane. Yeah,
and I know they shot on location some stuff. There was Pittsburgh was standing in for New York or something. Or no, it was Cleveland, Ohio. Pittsburgh is Dark Knight Rises, sorry. And then I've also seen there's obviously green screen work and all that, but it looks seamless. You can't even tell, you know intuitively those are special effects. They don't look like it. They look like there's real Chitauri coming down. Whatever a real Chitauri looks like. But, I mean, it's just, to me, and it doesn't even kick into high gear until Hulk appears.
Yeah.
And until then, it's still really impressive. And you could, like, when Hulk punches out the big, alien robot thing, if that were the end of the movie, it would still be satisfying.
Yeah.
But they keep going, and it gets so good, and, that's when you have the big spinning shot that's in all the trailers that I love of all the Avengers assembled, and, that happens, and then Captain America gives the orders, and, there's the great moment where he says, Hulk, smash!
And Hulk gets this big grin on his face, and he, like, jumps away and starts beating the shit out of stuff.
Yes. And then you have... layered on top of that, character work still going on between all of them. And, especially with Tony Stark making the decision, and it's set up earlier with Captain America saying, would you be the guy to make the sacrifice call? And, he has to get the nuke, and of course you keep cutting back to S.H.I.E.L.D. and what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And it is just, even the second time I saw it, which actually was, in some sense, the first time, because I couldn't really see what was going on the first time, because I saw it in a really bad 3D projection system. But it was like, I knew what was going to happen, and I was on the edge of my seat, and I realized in one scene, I was like holding my breath with tension at this thing. And it was just, it's so great. And in the second screening I saw, some group of people in the theater or another were trying to get applause started every minute. I kid you not, for something that was happening. And you really could. You could applaud every beat in that sequence. And again, they give each character equal weight in that fight. You keep cutting to them. There's this great long shot, which is something Whedon works into all his movies and stuff, where you're going throughout the city and you see each of the Avengers in one camera take.
Yeah.
But to be honest, the whole fight feels like it's one take because the editing is so seamless and the sense of space is so seamless. It doesn't feel like you're going cut, cut, cut. It's just this seamless progression, like you're flying through the city watching the Avengers go to work on this force. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, no, I think... there is so much, I mean, like you were saying, where there's, like, all these different action beats that could be, like, the big moment of its own movie, like when Hawkeye jumps off the rooftop and pulls out his hair, and I also saw it in 3D, but I saw it in good 3D screening, and that's, like, the only, like, good 3D shot I can pick out of my head is he shoots the arrow right at the screen.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and then, like, I mean, there's a scene where Black Widow, like, jumps onto the Skrull Chitauri,
that's
like,
awesome.
flying motorcycle thingy. Is like one of the moments that is like there's like a really small moment that I really love is it's just like this one like little shot where like Iron Man comes down and he shoots his repulsor beams at Captain America's shield and Captain America reflects it off and makes it hit the Chitauri.
That's in the long take, and so it's just they go past
it. I just like, but like in my head, after that, I was just kind of like thinking about all the shit that went on in that scene. I was thinking about that moment. It's like, did like Iron Man tell Captain America? It's like, who came up with that idea at that moment to do that? Because it's like, I feel like I've seen that like happen like hundreds of times, and like I know that's like happens in like the Marvel Ultimate Alliance video game. You can do that like combo attack, and then also I feel like I've seen that in comic books all the time where they do that. But in comic books, you always like can like stop it, and they have like 500 like lines of dialogue like setting up what they're going to do because you can just freeze time in a comic book, and that is like what's telling you it's like. Cat, block this! It's like,
it's great, though. And I read this I was on a forum the other day talking about the Avengers, and someone said in their screening, someone recognized it from Marvel Ultimate Alliance and yelled, I fucking did that move! That's great. I wish that guy was in my screening.
Yeah, that's great.
I had a guy who yelled something really funny about one of the post-credits scene, but we'll get there in a minute. Anything else? We need to talk at least a little bit. We need to mention it one more time how awesome it is when Hulk beats the shit out of Loki.
Yeah, that's a great, great moment because it mixes the best part of Loki as a villain and the best part of Hulk as a hero. Because it's like Loki's, I just love it's like Loki's like, enough! He's like, I am a god! And then Hulk just picks him up and it's just, I love, they just went completely over the top with it. Like, they knew how ridiculous it was. And Hulk just beats the ever-living shit out of him. Like, he literally mops the floor with him at one point. Like, it's ridiculous.
Like, it's one of those moments, and I felt this a lot in Cabin in the Woods, too, which is why I love that movie, where I couldn't believe I was watching this from a major studio movie in a theater. Like, I can't believe that Joss Whedon was able to go to the special effects team and say, you know what I want you to do? I want you to animate the Hulk beating up Loki, like just punching him and stuff? No, he has to pick him up and, like, smash him around the room.
It's like, in my head now, it's like Joss Whedon is like just kind of, like, do this, and he, like, picks up, like, a stuffed animal, and just, like, beats the crap out of the stuffed animal. But it's like, it just, like, makes me think of, I saw an interview with Joss Whedon, where it's, like, where the guy was asking, just, like, so what are you going to do now? And Joss Whedon just, like, sighs, like, I'm going to take a rest.
Yeah.
So you kind of like imagine this has got to be a really exhausting movie to make.
Yes.
Because I mean, I also heard that there's like something ridiculous, like half of like the original cut was like 3 hours, or even a little bit longer than that,
which is common for a lot of movies.
Yeah,
but
I mean, especially for this, it seems like that has got to be even like every element, like every person involved with this movie had to be at the top of their game.
Yes.
To make it come out like this, this has got to be one hell of a movie to try to edit.
Yeah. Oh my God, the editing deserves an Oscar nomination, and it's not going to get it because they don't give it to these movies, which is stupid. But I can't even begin to imagine what the editor went through.
Yeah, that's
and waiting on the sound team and the effects team and all this, and trying to how do you do a rough cut of that without the effects?
Yeah,
it's mind-boggling. But yeah, so let's talk about the technical aspects. I think we've done the movie justice. I fucking am in love with the cinematography in this movie. I thought it was brilliant. Let's really quickly go over the 3D. I saw it in a 3D screening where there were a lot of technical problems with the screening. This was a press screening. I didn't choose to see it that way. And there were a lot of technical issues, including the sound was coming out of like one speaker muffled, which made it really hard to hear the movie.
Yeah,
but I was also down and at an angle, so the 3D didn't work for me. It was just sort of blurry, and there was some depth, but it was also very dark and everything. But if you see it in how Joss Whedon actually shot the movie and how the cinematographer shot the movie, it's a very bright, colorful, primary colors movie, and it sort of goes back to that idea that I think is why the movies work so well, is it doesn't try to apologize for being a comic book movie.
Yeah.
It says, comic books are awesome. Why can't we celebrate that?
Yeah.
And that's what the visual palette does. And it's also, and this is really interesting, it's shot in the 1.85 to 1 aspect ratio, which is what your widescreen TV would be. Most superhero movies and all the Marvel movies are shot in the wider 2.35 to 1. And that would seem a little weird at first, and then you see the movie and you see exactly why they did it, because they're going for sort of height and grandeur, and it's very hard to pull off in that aspect ratio, but fuck, they did it. Like, I saw it on the largest, sans an IMAX screen. It's called the Cine Capri. It's one of the largest screens in Colorado, and it just was enveloping the whole movie to see it that way. And you actually saw it in an IMAX screen.
Yeah, I saw an IMAX cool. 3D screening where the 3D on mine was perfectly fine.
Okay.
I mean, like, the 3D didn't really add much to the movie, but
yeah,
it's like I would if is it even possible to see an IMAX 2D screening? Like, do they show that?
No,
that sucks because
yeah.
That would have been my preferred, but I was like, 3D IMAX, I'll take that IMAX and 3D.
But the colors still came through.
Yeah, the colors are still fine. It's like,
well, for instance, like I love even in the darkest scenes, like in the first scene where Nick Fury comes into the lab and they're working on the Tesseract and everything. That scene would normally just sort of look black and have black walls and stuff. There's actually a lot of blue at work in that scene. And
the shield's kind of got like a blue thing going on.
Yeah. So it's just really colorful, and I love that. And I think every frame composition is just really well done. There's a lot of frames I would like just as posters, like the one with Iron Man and Cap that I noted where they first meet, or with the three of them in the forest together, or maybe the best frame in the movie, which is when Hawkeye is aiming the arrow at Loki and all of them are behind him and it's a low angle on them. That's great.
It's a great team shot. I think, for me, what stands out the most, because it's really different to how the rest of the movie is when they capture Loki and Thor grabs him and flies off. And I love how in this they really, I don't know if they emphasize it, but I definitely noticed it, where it's like every time Thor takes off, he does the thing where he swings his hammer and then he throws it and catches it, because that's how Thor flies.
Yeah.
Which is a really stupid way to fly, but that's how he does it in the comic book. So it's like, I guess his hammer is supposed to be so heavy that he can swing it really fast, throw it, then catch the leather thong on the back, and then just, like, the weight of it carries him. Which is fucking stupid as shit, but they do it in the movie, so I love that. And but then, like, he takes him and he flies off, and then he lands on, like, this, like, it looks like he lands on, like, Pride Rock from Lion King.
It looks awesome.
But it's like Pride Rock and Lion King after, like, the apocalypse, and it's, like, lightning, and it's raining, and it's just, like, really... And, I mean, this is how I know, like, the 3D screening wasn't bad, because it was a really dark scene, but it wasn't... Like, I could still make out everything I could make out all the
There's a lot of blue in that scene, I know,
And so it's, like... And it's just, like, that... I love that scene where... It's because it's so different from the rest of the movie, where it's just Thor and Loki.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then the rest of the movie I really love. They definitely... I mean, it's nice because from the comic books, the character designs work so well that way that the colors just of all the characters mix really well together, because you've got, like... Even though, like, you'd think, like, the Hulk really stands out as this big green guy, but it kind of fits with the rest of the color palette.
Yes. And, Iron Man's costume is even brightened a little bit.
Yeah.
And, should we talk about the awesome scene where just really quickly, I want to cover that action beat where he jumps off the tower. He's thrown out, and he has the Iron Man suit come and conform to him.
Yeah, that was a pretty awesome moment.
Okay.
That was like, and there was another thing where it's just like it felt really painful when Tony gets thrown out the window because it's just him. Yes. He doesn't have any of the Iron Man stuff. It's just Tony. So you're like, oh shit, that had to hurt.
Yeah.
No.
Really quick, a fun anecdote I heard in an interview with Joss Whedon is he wrote that entire scene and had the triangle costume destroyed because he hated the triangle design. Mm. He said, and I quote, "The triangle is ass." Yeah. He actually in interviews has insulted other people's work a lot. He like Zach Penn shares a story credit on this, even though that's from an old draft. He did not write any of the final movie. Mm. But the other day, Joss Whedon gave an interview and they asked, he said, "But someone else did write this with you, right?" He's got the credit. He said, "Well, there was a script when I came on, but there wasn't a script I would shoot a single frame of."
Oh, Jesus.
Like, that's an insult.
Although I have to agree with him that I don't particularly like the triangle on the on the Iron Man.
So he did that whole scene so he could have to circle back for the final fight.
He's sorry, because it doesn't make sense. Like the triangle just like clashed with because he's a very smooth character. He's Iron Man. Yeah. So
it was nice to have around for half a movie, but I'm glad with the circle back. But anyway, all right. So we talked about the cinematography. I touched on the 3D if you choose to see it that way, though I think we would both endorse save your money and go to 2D.
Yeah.
Unless you really want to see it in IMAX.
Yeah, I think the IMAX 3D was worth it. I think. I mean,
yeah.
I'm definitely going to see it at some point in time again on a 2D screening.
Right. But I understand. I mean, IMAX is awesome for many reasons. So, the music, Alan Silvestri's score. We both loved his score for Captain America. I don't know if this one was quite as good, but I actually really liked it too.
Yeah, I liked it. It wasn't like a huge standout score, but it didn't need to be.
Well, and the way Joss Whedon works and does sound design in his movies and shows is that music is not the focal point it is for some directors. Mm-hmm. But when they needed it, it sounded really good. And I actually liked the Avengers theme that he wrote an awful lot. That we played at the beginning of this podcast. When I saw the movie the second time and could actually make the music out, I could not get it out of my head for like a couple hours. And wound up buying the soundtrack and everything. So, good work there. I mean, sound design across the board, it like shakes the foundations of the theater in some scenes. So that was great. Anything else sort of on the technical filmmaking side to mention?
I don't think so. It's one hell of a movie on that.
Oh, yeah.
Like once again, it's just like, I was just like going over my head. It's like, how the fuck do you edit that?
It looks in some sense like the biggest budget movie I've ever seen, and it's actually comparatively not nearly as much as the biggest budget movies ever made.
It's like you definitely like, how do you know off the top of your head how much it cost?
It cost $220 million is the official budget.
It definitely feels you can feel that. It's like you can see the budget. Like you definitely feel like this is a really high budget movie. Like you feel like they got their dollar worth out of like everything.
But I'm just saying this looks like more higher budget and getting your dollar's worth out of everything than say Avatar or Transformers or Pirates 3, which is apparently the most expensive movie ever made. Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End is over $300 million for the budget. Can you believe that? It does not look like that at all.
Yeah, no, that does not. Like the Avengers looks like it should have twice that budget. The budget of At World's End.
Yeah. So, we just want to thank the effects team and the editors for probably losing all of your hair and sleep and everything else you did to get this movie together. So. You all earned the mammoth budget or mammoth box office take.
Yeah, seriously.
So let's talk about that.
Okay.
Avengers, before opening in the U.S., had accumulated nearly $400 million worldwide. It had already turned a profit before it opened in the U.S. I don't know if that's ever happened before. I don't think it has. So that's crazy.
Yeah.
U.S. opening weekend, it makes $207 million. There's an article on JonathanLack.com where I go through all those figures and which records it broke and what I sort of think this means. But that means for U.S. domestic box office, it broke the opening weekend record, it broke the single-day Saturday gross record, it broke the single-day Sunday gross record, it broke the fastest to $200 million record, and I think it will be the fastest to $1 billion worldwide now. Because it's already, today, it got up to like $700 million worldwide. So, that's nuts. And no one expected the movie. There were a lot of people thinking, oh, it'll probably break the box office record, but that was, for the U.S., only $170 million from Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. Mm-hmm. So people thought it'll do 175 or something.
Yeah.
No one predicted over 200 million. No one has ever said a movie will break 200 million opening weekend. What do you think it is that got people so excited to see the Avengers and to spend this much money on it?
I think it's just because they've been building it up, and they've been building it up really well. Where everywhere it feels like it's not this special cult thing anymore. Really,
Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of felt like that for a while. Where it's, I mean, especially if like you have a character like Spider-Man or Batman, where it's like everyone knows Spider-Man and Batman, but now it feels like Marvel has really successfully pushed their own style and their own universe out into the mainstream through their cinematic universe. And I think it's gotten, because they've made all the movies building up to it so good.
But part of the thing that's interesting about that is that there's much of the audience, it's not possible that they saw some of those movies.
Yeah.
Because the opening weekend gross is bigger than the lifetime domestic gross of The Incredible Hulk, Thor, and Captain America.
No, well, I
In
mean,
one
I guess,
weekend, so it's...
but I mean, come on, like everyone knows
Right.
someone who saw some of those movies and loved
Yes.
those movies, and it just
That's
it
what I was
seems
going to say,
like,
word of mouth.
Yeah, it definitely seems like, and just because it is such a huge project,
Yeah.
and everyone knows it's such a huge project,
And they marketed the hell out of this thing. It was one of the best marketing campaigns I've seen in my time as a movie critic. Holy shit. The trailers were great, the TV spots were great. They didn't oversaturate it, which was a good trick. But like the posters and everything, like it's not a poster I would buy and put on my wall, but it made you feel excited when you saw it. Just how they marketed every inch of it just made it feel like a big event movie that you had to see. And I think the other thing, and maybe I'm being just optimistic here, but I also think the movie is so good, and people knew it was good going into it, I think a lesser movie would not have done those numbers.
Oh yeah, no, I think especially, I mean, for anyone, I mean, after you see this movie, you want to tell people about it because
Yes.
it is such a huge spectacle. This movie is the definition of blockbuster to me.
Yes.
I mean, the blockbuster action. This is like kind of the pinnacle of that kind of movie.
Yes.
And so it definitely has to be. If you know someone who saw it, they're going to tell you about it.
And the reviews were great, and they did a lot of pre-screenings to make sure people would, just regular people would go out and talk about it. And the entire idea of opening it worldwide before it came to America was brilliant too, because with the internet, that meant the internet was afire about this movie before Americans even saw it. And again, I think, there's a lot of people, especially in my film school at CU Boulder, I've gotten a lot of this really sort of cynicism about the Hollywood and blockbusters and that kind of stuff. And I don't like that, because you look at the highest grossing movies of all time, they're good movies. A bad movie would not make $200 million opening weekend.
Yeah, it's like they're good. They're not the best movies,
Maybe,
but
yeah.
like they're like, I mean, because it's like Avatar is not like the best movie ever.
No.
It doesn't deserve to have the most movie. There's the most money.
But it's a good...
Yeah, but it's a good movie. It's
Yeah.
not like, there's someone like took a dump, like
Yeah.
The Room. It's not
Yeah.
like a movie like The Room, one of the worst movies
Yeah.
ever. It makes like hundreds of millions of
And
dollars.
I mean, people like to throw out Twilight as an example. Twilight doesn't do numbers anywhere near this.
Yeah,
It
I
does
mean-
big numbers at midnight, and that's it. Everything else
it's
is
got.
coasting.
I mean, the Twilight. Honestly, like Twilight is kind of like just a giant fucking cult movie.
Yes.
Because it's like the people, like it gets like that one specific audience goes
Yes.
and sees it once, and then it feels like it's like kind of
That's
goes
it.
away for a while until the next movie comes out.
Yeah, it coasts. I mean, its opening weekends, I think it was something like New Moon had 78 million first day, and then the actual opening weekend was like $100 million. It's it's very small, and so yeah, and I think I think Avengers just furthers that theory. And the lesson I hope studios take away from this is that it is okay to take a big gamble, because Avengers was a gamble. It is
Yeah.
one of the biggest gambles in movie history, and people are going to forget that now because it did so well. This was a risk. And it paid off because they put quality first, they got quality filmmakers behind the camera, they got quality actors in front of the camera, and they made a what I would call a blockbuster masterpiece.
Yeah.
And that's where they put their sort of focus, and people came to see it. And I hope that's the lesson other studios take away from it. Marvel clearly knows that lesson already,
Yeah.
and they will continue doing this. But, I hope someone else, other studios are willing to take risks and know that the key to making the risk pay off is quality filmmakers and really going for it and not holding back.
Yeah.
So, and I would also like the Firefly fans to shut the fuck up about
I
it.
started hearing about that. It's
Now he can make 7 more seasons of Firefly.
It's like, I was just like, get the fuck over it. The show
It's
is
10
done.
years old. I love Firefly. It is one of my
It's
favorite things
fucking
ever.
done.
But it is a perfect 14-episode plus movie story. What more do you want out of it? That's my question.
Yeah, it's like,
Firefly
I can't
fans.
even imagine, like, you can't do like Firefly's done. It's like if it was like 1 or 2 years after Firefly got
Yes.
canceled, I could see, or like maybe 1 or 2 years after Serenity, they could try to do something with it. But now, Firefly's done. Yeah, I agree.
And I want to treasure what we have and not risk them going back and not recapturing that magic, because I think to a degree it was a lightning in a bottle thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I am excited for what this means for Joss Whedon, because I think he's got a lot of original ideas I want to see him make.
Yeah.
Like Cabin in the Woods and things like that. I want to see him do more of that. And I don't need him to go, like, and I've seen people saying, "Oh, we get a Buffy movie now," and all this. I'm like, no, I don't need
we're
that.
done with if you really want that much more Buffy or Angel, it's like there are comic books now for you.
Yes.
So it's like now it's kind of weirdly opposite of Avengers. It's like you can go that direction now.
Why I like Joss Whedon is not because he had one property I liked and I enjoyed that. It's because he seems to be a guy with a lot of original ideas who can do a lot of stuff. And I'm excited for his career because I feel we're finally going to see more of him in that way. Mm-hmm. And that people now are going to crave more of his stuff, and he's gone mainstream, and I want to share my love of that filmmaker with other people, and the Avengers is an easy way to do that. But I don't need him to go now to say, go to Paramount and say, like, I made you the Avengers, let me make 7 seasons of Firefly. He's
like, what the fuck would you even do? It's dumb.
I will also say he's never going to go back to TV now. He just made one of the biggest movies of all time. It could conceivably outgross Avatar. Do you think it could do that?
I don't think it will, but it might. I hope it does. Yeah, it's like it's a possibility.
Yeah, it'll at the very least it'll probably take the current number 3 spot. On the all time, because it will be fastest to 1 billion. All these other things, it's just nuts. And I think I don't usually get excited about box office results, but I'm happy about this because this is something that I feel for a long time. And Sean, you probably agree with me on this. Not as many people shared in sort of our love of these kinds of movies. Yeah. And it was always kind of looked down upon as, oh, it's just, it's pulp stuff, it's cult, all that sort of thing. And now everyone's in love with the Avengers.
Yeah.
And that makes me happy as a filmgoer, that other people are this in love with something I love this much. So.
Yeah.
Yep.
I have
post-credit scenes?
Well, first I just remembered my only other real, this is probably my most legitimate complaint with the movie. It's not a huge deal, is what the fuck was up with the, cabal of people that, sat, in shadowy rooms that talked to Nick Fury? Who the fuck were those people? They are not from, I can tell you right now, they are not from the comic books. Those people, that's my only real complaint, is those people came the fuck out of nowhere. They weren't set up, as far as, they weren't set up in any of the other movies, were they? Yeah, these people who just sit in these, dark, shadowy rooms and talk to Nick Fury, and then they send the nuke at New York. And I thought, having that, kind of that nuke, having that element to finish that climactic scene, I think that's a good idea to finish that action scene. That's pretty clever, of, sending that to blow up the Chitauri, whatever, home mother base or whatever. But those people came the fuck out of nowhere, and it, made no fucking sense that they tried to nuke New York.
Maybe if they came out of nowhere, they should have just gotten Anthony Stewart Head and made it the Slayer Council from Buffy.
It's just, I thought that was really weird. I thought, I was thinking about it, the best thing they could have done, but then this would have probably been too distracting, it would have only worked for, people like me, is having General Ross from the Hulk.
That would have been interesting.
Yeah, it seems like he could have conceivably, made that, a more legitimate plot device of sending a nuke to New York. Yeah. It felt like they just did, let's nuke New York really fast with these weird people that talk to New York, to talk to Nick Fury.
Yeah.
That's my biggest, structural or narrative complaint with the movie. It's, that's not a huge...
It adds up to 2 minutes of the movie.
It's that, and it's it really only is, it's kind of works only because it's a sort of a cliche thing. You're so used to seeing something like that, and so you're kind of I can kind of buy it. But they don't set it up that well within the context of the movie.
Okay.
But yeah, that's my biggest complaint with that.
Well, I'll say, if that's the biggest structural complaint in a movie this complex to put together, that speaks to the movie's power, in a sense.
That and Black Widow should have had a Russian accent.
Okay.
So Spider-Man has blue fingertips.
That's a different movie.
Well, I saw the trailer before, the Spider-Man trailer, before I saw Avengers, so it was in my mind, I was blue fingertips.
I want to talk about now the 2 post-credits scenes. Did you stay through to the very end to see the last one, too? Okay. Mm-hmm. First one, I'm going to let you go with this, because obviously it's not something I would have gotten without the help of Wikipedia.
This is a really obscure thing.
But I like that they did that.
Yeah, it was fucking awesome, because it's after, the kind of first credits where it's I really like that, too, where they had, all the different, hero designs coming up with, the main actors in the film, Joss Whedon's name. And then it cuts to, back on, I guess it's, the Chitauri Homeworld, where if I just have to say this because it's like comic book stuff. It's like in the main Marvel universe, the Chitauri are called the Skrull, and I actually didn't know this that the Chitauri are the Skrull in the Ultimate Universe because I never went into the Ultimate Universe that deep. But yeah, they're like aliens. They don't even really look like Skrulls, but whatever. And they're aliens, and it's like kind of like the main guy who was talking to Loki earlier, like at the beginning of the movie, and he's telling to some shadowy figure who's not talking to Nick Fury on a screen, and he's saying, to attack Earth is to court death. And then this guy turns around and gives this big fuck off smile, and if you know enough about comic books, you know it's motherfucking Thanos, who... Thanos is basically like a super mega death alien. I think he comes from... I think they're either called Eternals or Titans, I don't remember, because it's comic books, it's really fucking confusing. I'm sure he's had like thousands of different origin stories, but Thanos is basically an alien god-like guy who has an absolute fascination and obsession with death. So it's like a really cool line that they kind of set it up with, to court death, and that's why he smiles. Because that's like a really fucking obscure thing. But Thanos is kind of, if this is also, I guess, maybe equally obscure, I don't know. But if you're into DC, there's Jack Kirby's The New Gods, and like one of the DC's big like major villains is Darkseid. Thanos is like Marvel's Darkseid. Like Thanos is the guy you call in when you want to basically blow up the fucking world. And so yeah, they're definitely setting up. So that's going to be huge. Like that I'm just picturing in my head that's going to be a huge fucking fight scene if they're going to fight Thanos.
Yes. Well, I mean, is that really conceivably the only way they could go bigger in the sequel?
Yeah, it's like, I'm just thinking like because we talked about this on our last podcast when we were talking about the movies, like what other stuff they could do, and Thanos is definitely one of the biggest villains that Marvel has. I'm thinking like the only other ones that could really pose a threat is like Ultron. If they introduce Ant-Man, they can do Ultron, who's like a robot guy. They could do Doctor Doom, but they can't really do Doctor Doom because of Fantastic Four. But he's the only, like, he's a huge scale villain. Like Magneto's another huge scale villain. Like Apocalypse from the X-Men. Most of these are ones they can't really do. Then I guess they couldn't do Galactus either, could they? Because they must have that for the Fantastic Four, Rise of the Silver Surfer.
They did use that there, so they would own the rights. Shit.
And they didn't even fucking do Galactus. Galactus was a huge cloud of, like, pink mist in that movie.
Well,
if they better... I really hope they get... Like, Marvel gets Fantastic Four back somehow and is able to do Galactus and, like, have Joss Whedon do a Fantastic Four movie or an Avengers movie where Galactus comes in and he's a giant fucking dude in a purple outfit with a big purple hat with, like, two huge, like, tuning fork prongs off the top. That's motherfucking Galactus, the Eater of Worlds.
So he's not a pink cloud of
mist? No,
mist?
he's not a fucking pink cloud of mist.
Okay. There's a lot of disappointments in those Fantastic Four movies. So can I talk about the Thanos scene and sort of my relation to it? Thanos scene? Okay.
Derived from the Greek Thanatos, the god of death. Just
so it's actually kind of interesting. I saw the movie for the first time at an early press screening, and the final post-credit scene was not attached to that print because they weren't. They didn't put it out.
They filmed it later.
Yeah, but this one obviously was with Thanos, and I didn't know who the character was, but I was like, oh, it's a cool scene. I'm like, that guy seems like a villain and everything. But when Thanos turned around, it was actually before that. It was great when he said the line to court death, someone behind me was like, "No, they're not real." No, and then,
that was kind of like my reaction when I heard that line.
And then he turns around, and there must have been this big group of comic book nerds behind me because they were, "Oh, and they're like, no!" When they saw Thanos, they're like, that's how I heard the name of somebody else. It's Thanos, and they're like cheering, and like they were so pumped, and like other people started cheering with them who clearly didn't know who Thanos was. Like I think I clapped politely, and then I went home and read basically what you just explained online, and I mean I was really excited after that. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And I love that they did the courting death line and all that. It's just really clever. But I love that reaction. And then the second time I saw it, it was great. They said something like, the minion is talking about Earth, and like he says like, the Earth is protected, and someone behind me says, "Damn right it is!" It's great. So I love people like that in movies.
Yeah, I just love that. I just love how they did that with Thanos. With Thanos, I mean, obviously, Thanos is a hugely obscure character. Like, if you aren't into comic books, you're not going to know Thanos. He has no, like, presence in any... I don't even think he's been in, like, anything other than the comic books. I don't think he's been in any of the video games. He's definitely not been in any of the movies.
All right.
I don't think he's been in. He may have been in like a few episodes of like the Spider-Man cartoon or something like that. But it's like Thanos has like no exposure, so it's really cool that they decided to go with a reveal like that, where it's like only people who actually know the comic books are ever going to recognize that.
Right. It was a nice little gift to the fans.
Yeah.
And I really also loved the second post-credit scene where that is a pure Joss Whedon moment.
Yeah.
But it's a perfect one for this movie. And so that's the second post-credit scene, obviously, is they're eating shawarma. It's completely silent. They're just sitting there. I just love that they're all got the shit beat out of them, and they're just sitting there eating. And I love the sight of Thor just sort of contemplating.
Yeah, like Thor's the best one because he's in his full costume and he's just sitting there, like just kind of thinking. He's like, we'll take a few bites. He's just thinking.
And I love that, that's something that people always joke about, is like, what are superheroes going to do after they've saved the day? Yeah. And they actually show it, that they go, Tony, and of course Tony's going to get them to do that. Yeah. Go to the shawarma store and get shawarma and just start, just sit there and eat, and they all look so disheveled, and they look so tired, and there's the guy sort of sweeping up the destruction. Yeah. It's great. The only way that scene could have been better is if Loki was sitting next to Thor in chains, and like, reached for Thor's sandwich, and like, Thor would like, slap his hand. That would be great.
Oh, yeah.
But I love that. That scene I didn't expect it at all, but I thought it was great. And it was kind of funny because the biggest laugh of that scene comes when it ends and no one's talked. And it's great. So, obviously not a lot to dissect in that scene, but...
I love the cinematography. Yeah. Because really, I just like those long shots like that, I thought it was really well done.
They shot that scene, if you haven't heard this story... Joss Whedon realized he wanted that scene in the movie after they shot the film. The Entertainment Weekly did a whole interview with him about this scene, and he realized he wanted it in the movie while they were editing it, because he's like, I like that shawarma joke, I want to follow it up. But it was, all these actors are so big now, and they're all doing their own stuff, they couldn't get them back together until the world premiere. So at the world premiere, like, while the movie was being screened, they went out and shot this. And Robert Downey Jr. let it slip that they were shooting another scene there, and then Kevin Feige, the producer, was trying to downplay that, like, no, we weren't doing anything. And then, so that's what they shot. And that's a pretty impressive turnaround time, that they got a scene shot at the world premiere that made it
Especially because they had, like, Thor and Captain America and Black Widow and Hawkeye were all completely in costume.
Right. So, and all of them had to be in full makeup for the dishevelment, and obviously Iron Man had to have his blue heart thing. Mm-hmm. So, really cool. Yes. So, sadly, people in other countries do not get that scene. It's not coming out in...
Well, you can look it up on YouTube.
I'm sure you can. Yes. So, that is the Avengers. Let's do final thoughts really quick. What are your final thoughts?
Really, really awesome. And I mean, it's kind of evil that they put in that Thanos scene, because I'm more excited for Avengers 2. And I really hope they get Joss Whedon to do that.
Yes. Well, he is contracted to do it if they do it, and they will obviously do it now. So,
that's good.
Yes. I mean, there's a way he could get out of it, or they could kick him out, but I don't think they will. Everyone loves the movie, and they're going to do everything they can to get him back. So,
and also, like, I guess this isn't necessarily final thoughts, but moving on to my thoughts for like Avengers 2, I really want to see what they're going to do with like new heroes in the next wave, because I was looking for it, and I haven't seen if anyone else has seen one online, but I didn't spot any sort of like Ant-Man or Wasp reference.
Okay, so let's talk about that really quick, though. We know which movies are scheduled at this point. Iron Man 3 is next May.
Yeah.
Next Christmas is Thor 2. And then 2 summers from now, 2014, is Captain America 2. So they're all getting their own movies. That's taken care of.
Yeah.
They have 2 other slots on the schedule, as far as I know. I don't know what they're going to fill with those. They're not planning another individual Hulk movie before Avengers 2. But they may do one at some point. But they have been working with Edgar Wright for a number of years trying to get an Ant-Man movie made. Now, Edgar Wright is the guy who made Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and Scott Pilgrim. And I would be really excited to see him do a comic book movie.
Yeah.
And it looks like a deal is getting close to being made for him to do an Ant-Man movie. So you could see Ant-Man in Avengers 2.
That's good. Like, Ant-Man's one of those heroes where he's a big force in the Marvel Universe, but like nobody knows who the fuck Ant-Man is.
Okay.
So
One thing I will say,
if they get an Ant-Man movie made.
One thing I will say about Avengers 2 is I hope they don't rush it out, because it's made a lot of money. That's going to be their instinct. I hope they take another 4 years. They have to get
I agree.
lay the groundwork and get it right. rushing it is only going to hurt the quality of the movie. So I hope they don't do that, and I don't think they will, because the difference is that the Avengers will still be in everyone's minds because they have multiple Marvel movies coming out every year from now on.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and if they want, I hope they kind of are able to, without like distracting from the main movie, like seed some stuff for Avengers 2. I'm sure they're going to.
Yeah.
Like maybe seed some stuff for like the return of the Chitauri and Thane.
Right. And now that they've done it once, it'll be easier a second time because they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're not in uncharted territory anymore. But going into final thoughts, actually, in relation to the sequel and everything, one thing I really do like about Avengers 1, though, is, and I should back up, one of my pet peeves in blockbuster filmmaking and superhero filmmaking is when you're so caught up in making a franchise, you wind up making a movie that feels incomplete and has a lot of setup for a sequel.
Yeah, where like they basically don't have an ending.
Yeah, stuff like that. Or just big sections of the movie feel like, well, that's setting up for something later. It doesn't feel complete here. Iron Man 2 does some of that.
Yeah.
And what I love about the Avengers, one of the things I love most about the Avengers is it feels like they made the Avengers movie, and they weren't holding anything back. They just made the movie that deserves to be called the Avengers. And while it would be sad if there was never another one or anything, I would be satisfied if just this is the Avengers movie. You don't need more when it's over.
Yeah.
But they leave avenues open, or you know that they could be creative and create new stuff for it. So. That's one of the things I like about it. But I guess my final thoughts about the Avengers, and by final thoughts I sort of meant where do you think it fits into the canon?
Well, you should have said that then.
Okay, sorry.
But how does final thoughts?
I don't know.
That does not translate to where do you think it fits in the canon.
What I meant by, okay.
My final thought could have been about anything.
I know, I'm sorry.
Might not have anything to do with
I'm
canon.
sorry, Sean.
It didn't.
God damn it, I'm sorry. Okay. What I was going to say is, I'm going to ask you, this is a superhero movie. Where do you think it fits quality-wise in the hierarchy of superhero comic book films?
It's definitely at the top. Like, I should say, when we talked about this before we did started the podcast, I don't consider Dark Knight to be a superhero movie.
Neither do I.
Or, like, Batman Begins is a little bit more, but I still would call those crime thrillers.
Yes, I think those are, crime thrillers.
Because they're really different types. They're completely different kinds of movies.
Yeah.
I mean, even from the older... I mean, I would still consider, like, the Tim Burton Batman movie a superhero movie.
Sure.
Because it feels like a superhero movie. But so just saying that, I'm not going to try to rank where Dark Knight is.
Yeah.
I would say it's I don't know if I would call it the top. It's top one or top two. It's like it's vying with Spider-Man 2, and part of that is just because I love Spider-Man the character so much that like Spider-Man 2 is really near and dear to my heart.
Right, and Spider-Man 2 is near and dear to my heart for all sorts of reasons too. And it's the same thing for me. It's vying for number 1 or 2. In the heat of the moment now, having seen it twice and just so involved in the Avengers sort of story and everything going on, I'm inclined to call it the best superhero movie so far. We'll see if I cool down on that. If I do, at worst, it's going to be number 2.
Yeah.
So they really hit this one out of the park. And actually, now we should open this up into sort of like, does this enter a sort of pantheon or significance level in filmmaking itself? And I would argue it does, because the increasing importance of blockbuster filmmaking in the last decade and the increasing importance of the superhero film, which whether or not you're a fan of superhero movies, you have to recognize them as a significant part of the cultural film landscape right now.
Yeah.
And I think if this is the sort of culmination of that and the top tier, I do think this has a significance in film history.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think it's also just kind of like with like, I think it's opening up an avenue for a different kind of mindset where you can create this, like, movies don't necessarily have to only be their own thing or only lead into its, like, own sequel. Because Marvel's managed to create this their own cinematic universe with its own continuity, its own canon, and its own, like, sense of style, its own thing. It's opened up, I think, an avenue for, I mean, people are always talking about there maybe being like a Justice League movie, which I don't think, it seems like that would be really difficult to get to happen because I think like the rights are distributed around a lot of different people, and DC doesn't really take hold of their own movie franchises like Marvel does.
Well, but DC is owned by WB, so that's actually would be easier for them because Warner Brothers would just make all of them. So Warner Brothers just has never gotten on that.
Yeah, but
they would have to create a DC movies division if they wanted to do that.
Yeah. So it's like, but I mean, it's definitely Avengers to set a precedent where you can do something like that, where you can set up something larger within the context of individual films in a way that as far as I'm aware, nothing has ever done before. Certainly nothing on this scale.
Well, and, it's sort of interesting. I'm working on a book right now that is it's going to come out this year, and it's sort of about the 10 years I've spent being a film critic and what I feel like, what movies made me fall in love with films, and it's basically a list of my 31 favorite movies, but favorite being ranked as, or what I mean by favorite is like the movies that made me fall in love with movies, or I feel are significant to my knowledge of films, and The Avengers is going in that book, and I've been working on that essay because, again, of what I feel it defines for blockbusters right now and what they can be. And I think you trace that history back, and comic books themselves are a significant medium because they were one of the first mediums, maybe the first, where you could have these big stories with lots of characters, and you could form relationships with them over weeks and months and years. Yeah. And then the payoffs were so much bigger. And TV started doing that in the late 1990s, and Joss Whedon is one of the people who brought that comic book sensibility to TV with Buffy and with Angel. And we call it serialization now for TV shows, and it's revolutionary for the TV medium. It's what comic books have been doing their entire lifespan. Yeah. And it's so cool, and I think we've had so many great TV series in the last 10 years that are great because you get to know these characters and these stories and scenarios over weeks and months and years, and then the payoffs are so big. And that's what makes TV so exciting right now. And film, The Avengers is the first step to getting film to that point, you know?
Yeah.
And I think to a slightly lesser extent because, Harry Potter is another good example of that, whether you like it or not. That was 8 films with one set of characters and actors, and there was a lot of payoff there if you liked Harry Potter. But Harry Potter is a slightly lesser achievement in that way from the Avengers because it's one universe.
Yeah, it's a series of sequels.
Right. And it had never been done before like that. But the Avengers is even bigger in terms of that ambition. And it's really interesting. And I do think, I think there's going to be significance discussion as film goes along and what this is going to be the start of, or at least what it signifies for this sort of era of filmmaking.
Yeah.
And for me, it makes me think positively about this era of filmmaking, Yeah,
so. I think it's definitely, like I said, is opening a door to new possibilities. It's going to be I think it's still going to be a really difficult thing to do because it's like the challenges in doing it are still there, but Avengers has proven that it can be done.
Yes.
And that it can make insane amounts of money doing it.
Yes. So, that's the Avengers.
Assembled.
They have assembled. All right. We are going to do a special bonus segment now. We decided to do this.
Bonus segment.
Yes. We are going to... I like your little... Chance. No, not Chance.
Chance?
Theme songs. No, I don't know.
Bonus segment.
Bonus segment. Okay. Never mind. We're going to talk about some new movie trailers. We would normally hold this for like the big podcast that we do each month where we do sort of news overviews and stuff before the topic. But the topic we're doing for May, though, actually, this is good we're doing it now. The topic we're doing for May is going to be one of our longest podcasts ever. I just know it. And we'll reveal what that topic is.
Longer than Doctor Who podcasts?
No, because it won't be multiple parts.
Okay.
But you know what we're doing for May,
yeah.
So it's going to be big. And we'll reveal that at the end of this podcast to make you listen through to the end. But for now, we're going to talk about some of those movie trailers. Before the Avengers debuted the trailers for The Dark Knight Rises and the latest one for The Amazing Spider-Man, or latest for both of them. I would like to start with Amazing Spider-Man because I think it's the lesser of the two trailers.
Okay.
Let's just get that one out of the way first. I've actually sort of enjoyed the marketing they've been doing for Amazing Spider-Man so far. I think it's sold what they're doing new, what they're doing sort of old. It's focused on certain parts of the movie that I sort of doubt they're going to be focusing that heavily on in the film itself. This new trailer, while I really enjoyed the visuals, I think it looks like Mark Webb has understood how to do Spider-Man action really well. That's what I'm sort of the vibe I'm getting. The tone of this trailer really turned me off. It's very morose. It's very somber. Yeah. You put it next to the Dark Knight Rises trailer, which should be somber. That's Batman. And they feel somewhat similar, and it's like, that's not right. And I don't think that's what the movie's going to be. This is just a marketing tactic. To be honest, they did that with all the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans too. But, did you get that vibe?
Yeah, that's kind of the vibe I've had with most of them, except for the early teaser trailer, is that it's definitely a little bit dark. But I agree with you, it's not... I do definitely get a sense that there's a lot of stuff in the trailer that it definitely feels like it's like they're emphasizing this in the trailer where it's not going to be emphasized in the movie.
But, it starts and Peter's, walking in slow motion down the hallway and people are throwing stuff at his head. And he says, I've been tortured my whole life by what happened to my parents.
Yeah.
And it's like, and I will predict that line's not even in the movie because that felt like a trailer line.
It's going to have to be, really shoehorned into the movie. I don't know what you would say that.
But, yeah, it's just... and the way they're cutting the trailer with the slow fades and stuff. It just, I don't know. For me, I don't know why you want to sell Spider-Man like that. And I think now the success of the Avengers makes me wonder: are they going to reorient their marketing campaign now?
It's like, ah, shit, we have this really fun comic book movie, but Dark Knight made so much money, but fuck, now Avengers is making more money than like anything.
Because again,
fucked up.
As we noted in an earlier segment of this podcast, it's quality that matters, not the sort of style and stuff. People will go see Dark Knight and Avengers in equal numbers if they're both good movies. So, but yeah, I mean, and what's your overall reaction to that Amazing Spider-Man trailer?
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely it's definitely emphasizing like it seems really grim. And there's also what is it? It's the trailer that it has the line where he's this is the line like everyone. Like I said, like I think when we talked about Amazing Spider-Man before, and it's like, I'm kind of lukewarm about the movie. I don't think like the trailers are getting me like super excited for it or anything.
Yeah.
But like the people who really like the trailers really, really annoy me.
Yeah.
And so they keep on fucking picking out these lines that are like, oh, see, this is Spider-Man's being Spider-Man, and he's so funny. I'm like, it's not a very funny line. And he's got the line where it's like, oh, you figured out my weakness, small knives.
I thought it was a nice, pleasant, funny, but not great. No.
It's like, to me, I don't know what it is, but it's like the delivery of that line makes Spider-Man seem like less funny and more like kind of like dick. Like, cause,
he did seem like a dick.
It's like he's just like Spider-Man's supposed to be. He's like, I mean, he's sarcastic a lot of the time, but he's like funny and he's happy and he's Spider-Man. And this is like, it seems like he's kind of like just being a bit of like a douchebag. Like he's kind of like hipster Spider-Man. I don't know. It's just like it kind of. And I don't think it's, like, terrible, but, like, everyone fucking picks out that line and it's like, see, this is Spider-Man being funny like Spider-Man's supposed to be. And it's like, it's not like you're asking, like, that's the funniest fucking line you've ever heard in your life.
Yeah.
It's like, and I still have, my issue with it. I mean, they might be able to solve this, but conceptually, going with Spider-Man is one, he might seem like a giant douchebag. Or two, if they're trying to get him to do quips when he's fighting, which is when Spider-Man does his quips, it seems like it's going to be really hard to try to balance that out in like a live-action movie compared to like a comic book or even like a cartoon where like you can like have this like really weirdly like prolonged sense of time where it's like in a comic book you can freeze time. Like Spider-Man could be hanging, like jumping in the air and say like a fucking paragraph in a comic book and you wouldn't bat an eye.
Yeah.
And then with animation, you can kind of have a distorted sense of timescale, but with a live-action movie, I think it's going to be difficult for them to try to do, have him be the funny, jokey Peter Parker.
I mean, basically at this point with The Amazing Spider-Man, I have a certain amount of faith in the director, and I like everyone in the cast, so I'm interested in it. Everything they've said about the movie sounds right. Like, it seems like they have a lot of good ideas for it that I hope pan out. But I mean, it's not exciting me like some other movies are. I mean, here's a good example. The movie Snow White and the Huntsman that's coming out with Chris Hemsworth and Kristen Stewart and Charlize Theron sounded like the stupidest idea on earth to me. And I was like, I'm never going to see that movie. And then I saw the trailer, and that movie has legitimately great marketing that makes me really want to see that movie. It looks like they're doing something interesting and creative with it. And I'm at this point more interested in that in some ways than I am in the new Spider-Man movie. And I don't know if that's just a failure of the marketing or what, or I just
it's
I
the
don't
blue
know.
fingertips, man. It's the curse of the blue fingertips.
It does make me a little sad though now that I've seen the Avengers, and it's so good. It's just like, and Spider-Man's going to be at Sony for years now.
Yeah, it's like that's one of the depressing things about it. It's just like
even if Amazing Spider-Man is great, it's going to feel lukewarm just because Marvel's not going to ever get to do this character.
And it's Marvel's like flagship. Yeah. It's like it's their standout big character is Spider-Man. I mean, it's like the first real like huge movie. I mean, I guess X-Men was first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like, I mean, still, it's like Spider-Man's...
Spider-Man set the opening weekend record back in the day.
Spider-Man's the fucking cultural icon that Marvel has, and they're not going to get him. And it's like... And it's, that's like... And it's the same thing with, like, all of them. Like, X-Men I'm kind of okay with, because X-Men's not a huge part of the Marvel Universe either way.
It's its own thing.
Yeah. But it's like, with, like, Fantastic Four, and Daredevil, and Spider-Man, it's just, like, really... It kind of depresses me now that it's like... Those could be done so well by Marvel. And
they would get Spider-Man perfect.
And it would just be, it'd be so cool to see
I would love
Spider-Man in an Avengers movie, or like, I mean, also it's like, I mean, less having X-Men, I wish that they had Wolverine. Like, I don't care that much about the other X-Men, but Wolverine's a huge part of the Marvel Universe. It's like, he's a part of like 5 fucking different teams right now. It's just really depressing. I wish they could have like, do like new Avengers where they could have like Wolverine and Spider-Man, and then they could get like more obscure characters like Spider-Woman or Luke Cage, and like I wish that they could get some of their bigger franchises back and incorporate them into their new universe, because that'd be really cool. Doctor Doom. Doctor Doom is the one. It's like Doctor Doom and Spider-Man. Those are the two that rub me. Like, it's just like, I really wish just like Doctor Doom is so fucking cool. Yeah. And I want everyone to know how cool Doctor Doom is, but it might never happen.
That's too bad. Fantastic Four, though, if they're trying to get a movie made right now, but if it falls through, which right now it looks like it could, that will revert to Marvel in a year or two. So fingers crossed that Fox fucks it up. Because I have no faith in Fox ever making a good Fantastic Four movie. They don't get it. They have no investment in the character, you know.
Yeah.
Sony has no investment in Spider-Man. It just so happens they hired Sam Raimi for that trilogy, who had investment in him, and hopefully the makers of this movie have investment in it. But that's what our hope is, not that the studio itself has any interest in the character. They have financial interest, and that's it. That's a little disappointing. But so, okay, we were in agreement that the Amazing Spider-Man marketing, at the very least, has been a little underwhelming.
Yeah, or it definitely seems like, if not just underwhelming, it's going in the wrong direction.
Yeah. I just, I don't know why the selling point of Spider-Man isn't fun, because that's what I think of when I think of Spider-Man, is he's a fun character.
Yeah. Although I should also say that I don't think this was in the trailer. I think I just saw like a leaked screenshot online.
Lizard with
a lab coat. Yeah, I saw that. I'm like, well, at least, I mean, we haven't seen him in a lab coat anywhere else, but at least there will be a point in time in the movie where he will be wearing a lab coat, and that's okay. That warms the cockles of my heart.
Okay. Are you okay if, like, in one scene he's got it, and then maybe he sheds it?
Yeah, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, at least if, like, he transforms, like, when he's wearing the lab coat, and, like, that's, like, what rips the lab coat up, and he has it on for a while.
Okay.
Gets rid of it.
All right. Now, in terms of a marketing campaign that they are hitting it out of the fucking park, Dark Knight Rises. I have loved all the trailers so far, but when I watched the newest trailer that premiered before the Avengers, but it was also online a few days before, when I watched that, I watched it like 3 times in a row, because to me this is one of the most impressive movie trailers I've ever seen, in that it goes against all the current standards of movie trailers, where they went with just quiet and reserve, and sort of, they're focusing on sort of the beauty in the cinematography, and sort of a slow growing sense of dread. And it's very rare that a movie trailer projects what I think the tone of the actual movie will be. Even the Avengers trailer didn't quite nail that. This feels like, knowing what we know about Christopher Nolan and what I'm sensing of Dark Knight Rises so far, I got a sense of what this movie is going to be, and now I'm so excited for it. I honestly think, from how good this trailer was, this has a very good shot of outdoing Dark Knight, the first Dark Knight, just in terms of quality. Or the second Batman movie. It's called Dark Knight.
Yeah. It's like, I have like a funny thing where, I don't know why this happened, but it's like, for like a month, I was walking around in my head while I was thinking about Dark Knight Rises. I was thinking it was called Dark Knight Strikes Again, because that's the sequel to Dark Knight Returns. Yeah. And so it's like, and I keep on fucking forgetting and like mixing up the title, because there's so many Batman things called Dark Knight something.
Yeah,
but like, I fucking hate that title.
Sorry,
like, it would have been. Although Dark Knight Strikes Again is a terrible comic book, but it's like, at least that title's a bit more memorable than Dark Knight Rises to me.
I like the title Dark Knight Rises. It seems like they're tying it into them. Anyway, title's not important.
Dark Knight Strikes Again makes him sound like he's Zorro, which I kind of like that.
But no, I really like this trailer, and I like everything I'm seeing so far. I just think it looks like they've got a lot of cool characters. I love everything I've seen of Bane so far.
Bane. Yeah, I really like what I'm seeing of Bane, too.
Yeah, I mean, some people are complaining about sort of the garbled speech, but that to me is interesting, because that seems like they're making it into a part of the character.
Yeah. Although, like, I can kind of see, especially because my dad is really, really hard of hearing.
Okay.
And so I understand, like, my dad is one of the most annoying people to watch a movie with. Because he has, like, he will just completely, like, misinterpret what a line is, and, like, he'll have no idea what the fuck's going on.
Maybe you can, when Dark Knight Rises come out, take him to an open caption screening. They do those. They're actually pretty cool how they do it. It's pretty non-intrusive if you don't need the subtitles. Yeah. Anyway, no, I just like all the indications of sort of the plot and the scale of it, and that I love that they're playing up the stakes of this movie. Like, it feels to me like this is a movie where I'm predicting Batman's going to die in this movie, and if they do that, I think that'll be so cool for them to end a Batman live-action story with that. And I love that they're really focusing on how much the stakes are for Bruce Wayne in this film, and there's the great exchange where Catwoman is like urging him. She's saying, "You've given these people everything you have," and this to me feels like such a Batman moment where he says, "Not everything, not yet," which is a callback to The Dark Knight, but it's great. I love that trailer. To me, it plays like a great short film almost, just a 2-minute vignette. Mm-hmm. What did you think of it?
I mean, basically everything you said. I also really like how, at least for a lot of it, it feels like, I just like how it's how they're shooting Gotham now, or it's actually Chicago, right?
It was. Now it's Pittsburgh.
Okay, now it's Pittsburgh. But it's like it feels like, I don't even know if it's actually snowing, but it feels like it's winter. Like it's got
it is supposed to be winter in this movie.
It's like got this like really white palette. But I always like Batman should be like Batman only exists in fall and winter. Batman has never lived when there's spring and summer. Like,
he goes into hibernation.
Yeah, he must go. Like there's no fucking Batman story where he's walking around and it's like 90 degrees outside.
Right.
There's never nice weather in Gotham when Batman's outside.
Well, it's sort of interesting when the movie was filmed in the heat of summer, but Wally Feister is such a great cinematographer. He can make it look like snow, and then you add in some of the effects afterwards.
Yeah, it's just got like, I just like how Gotham has like this very white palette, which is kind of different than you'd expect. Yeah, but it just was really cool.
There's that great shot of Joseph Gordon-Levitt on the bridge, sort of rising up, and there's snow behind him. It's just sort of a semi-slow motion, but it's just this beautiful shot. Yeah. And then the bridges exploding have their own sort of beauty. And
yeah. I think the only thing this could be completely wrong. This is just a small thing in the trailers. Is I'm not completely sold on what I've seen of Anne Hathaway as Catwoman.
Oh, I really like her so far.
I think it's just like, I don't know, to me, Catwoman is a really difficult character to play. Kind of like with Black Widow. It's like she's a very stereotypical character that kind of found power in her stereotype in more modern comic books. And it's like, Anne Hathaway doesn't like feel like that, but I also it's like, well, I don't know, like what they're doing with Catwoman. I don't know, like how huge she's going to be, like what she's going to be doing in the movie. So it's like I have no real context for any impressions on her.
What I'm suspecting is she's sort of going to be an anti-hero role, as Catwoman sometimes is, and it looks like they're sort of playing into some social protest stuff, like Occupy Wall Street and things like that. Yeah. There's some lines about that, and Christopher Nolan has spoken about that a little bit, and most. Importantly, this is this case where I just want a new interpretation of the character more than anything. I don't mind them doing something new because I think she's been done in so many forums, and especially with Batman Arkham City having just come out and having the perfect Catwoman. Yeah, I have no burning desire to see a comic book, carbon copy of Catwoman right now. That was perfect. I want to see Anne Hathaway do something new, and given some of the dramatic work she's done in her career, I know that character is in the best possible hands, actress-wise. Now, you could wind up having a problem with the interpretation or how she's directed or something, but for that age range, you're not going to get a better actress who could sell that character. So, it's kind of cool. And I like it. I think they're really just selling I think they're convincing people why Bane is a great villain, and I'm just as excited to see this Bane as I was to see Heath Ledger's Joker, to be honest. And of course, you get the annoying people who every time you talk about it, it's like, but Heath Ledger's not in this movie. Well, you know like, what?
I know that's so annoying because it's like, I mean, Heath Ledger's Joker was really good in Dark Knight, but he's not what made The Dark Knight a good movie.
Yeah, he's part of it, but it was there were a lot of pieces. And there were, I think Gary Oldman, for instance, is just as crucial.
It's like there's so many. It's like if Heath Ledger as a Joker was what made Dark Knight a good movie, Dark Knight wouldn't be a good movie if it was so contingent on that one actor's performance.
And to be honest, that's the problem I've always had with Tim Burton's original Batman, is it's too contingent for me on Jack Nicholson and the Joker in some stretches.
And that might be part of why the sequel seems so strange in comparison to the original. Yeah, it's like
Batman Returns, which I like more because it spreads the love a little bit more. But yeah,
I like the first Batman more because Jack Nicholson is the Joker. So awesome.
Well, Batman Returns, I've always said, it's not a Batman movie.
Yeah, it's not. We're completely in agreement on, I think it's a good movie, but it's like, it's so hard to watch because it's not a Batman movie, but it is a Batman movie.
If you can separate that and just think, I think it's actually Tim Burton's, not his best movie, but it's his clearest sort of version of his own vision and sort of tics and stuff. And I love it as just a fun, or not fun, but really interesting Tim Burton movie. But no, it's a fucking horrible Batman movie. It has nothing to do with Batman. But yeah, so And I don't even get the people who now are I've seen some people online who Entertainment Weekly and other sort of outlets like that write about the films like this, who are saying, how will Anne Hathaway compare to Michelle Pfeiffer? I'm like, why would you ask that question? They're completely different.
Yeah, they look like completely different characters. I like Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman.
I love her, but
she was a really good interpretation of the character.
But there's no comparison, and
yeah, that's like they look like, and I'm not saying like she has to be like Michelle Pfeiffer, like
right.
You can definitely there's definitely a different room of interpretation there.
And I don't even. That would be like saying, how will Tom Hardy's Bane compare to Mexican wrestler Bane from Batman and Robin?
Who's in for like 5 minutes.
Yeah. So, no, I mean, after the Avengers now, that's over. My next most exciting movie that I'm prepared for is Dark Knight Rises, and I fully expect it to be the best, if not one of the best films of 2012. So, yeah. Any other movie trailers?
I'm trying to think. Well, what you were saying with the Dark Knight Rises trailer being like its own Dark Knight Strikes Again or Dark Knight Returns or whatever you want to call it. It's like it being almost like its own kind of like piece of art, like its own short film in a way. I was actually kind of mad that I saw it because I didn't want to see any trailers for it, but I saw the trailer for Prometheus because I wanted to go into that movie completely blind, but they showed it at the beginning.
Those
of the
are good trailers.
That wasn't that trailer. Like, even if I never saw Prometheus the movie, I'm like almost satisfied as that as like a piece of art. Like, that's good enough in its own right as like a short film.
Yeah.
And it didn't feel like it gave away that much from the movie, so that was fucking awesome.
I still, from the Prometheus trailers, I don't have a sense of what the story is yet.
Yeah, I don't particularly either, and it's just like, God, that trailer was so fucking cool. I mean, and they just did something like with like the pace of the trailer, and like the trailer builds up, and it's like when the trailer ends, it's like I felt like I just saw a horror movie. Like, my heart was pounding, like, Jesus fucking Christ.
Yeah.
That was one hell of a trailer.
So, that's good. Let's talk about plans for the monthly stuff now, because we have so many movies we're all excited for this summer. And we're going to need to do a discussion on Prometheus. We're going to need to do a discussion on Spider-Man and Dark Knight Rises.
Blue Fingertips. Yeah. Dark Knight Strikes Again.
The monthly stuff is not going to be monthly over the summer. We're going to be doing at least 2 a month. Does that sound...
Yeah, that probably sounds like it's
we're off school. We're going to have plenty of time. There's going to be more of them. And... so we hope you like them. And just so you know, this podcast is coming out on May 8th. And
so you people listening before the podcast come out know when it's going to come out.
No, I'm setting this up. This podcast is out May 8th. About 1 week from now, we're going to have the main podcast for May.
Main podcast.
And it'll be on either the 15th or 16th, around there is when it's going to come out. And that's going to be a celebration discussion, big topic about Red versus Blue, which is the most successful internet series of all time, and now the longest-running American sci-fi series.
Yeah,
which tickles me. I like that.
Although, they've got a pretty long haul to try to overtake longest sci-fi series ever from Doctor Who. They've got a few decades to get in before they win that title.
Yeah. It's kind of a cheat because there's, the 5 Star Trek series that come together to make 30 years too.
Well, that
doesn't count. Yeah, that's true. Anyway, but we're gonna go through all 9 seasons of Red vs. Blue, talk about them. We're just gonna Sean and I love this series, and we spend a lot of time talking about it anyway.
Yeah.
So we figured
it does feel like we generally mention it at least once, like every podcast somehow.
Yeah, that's true. And so yeah, we're excited to do that, and we'll probably talk about season 10 periodically through these podcasts as it goes along too. Just little discussions at the end. But
kind of like what we did with Doctor Who.
Yeah,
once in a while.
I think so.
Talking about this like that always will get brought up, like it is now.
Yes.
Yeah.
So 1 week from now, roughly 8 days, something like that, there will be another big podcast. That'll be our main one for this month, though this bonus podcast is almost as long as our normal ones. So we hope you've enjoyed it. This podcast is actually almost as long as the Avengers itself, which is pretty cool.
So you can see. So now you can load this up once the Avengers comes out on DVD and watch it as an audio commentary to the Avengers, which would be really confusing, but you can do it if you want to.
Sure. I mean, if you like to look at stuff while you listen, why not?
It's like, and maybe every once in a while, like, we'll be talking about a scene when that scene's happening, and you'll be like, holy shit, that's insane!
How did they plan that? The answer is...
we're mad geniuses.